Hello, Sairam, can you hear me? Sairam, can you hear me? Hello? Hello, Sairam Venkat. Sairam Venkat, hello.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome you back to the post-lunch session of the International Symposium on Recent Trends in Sustainability in Chemical Sciences. So in this post-lunch session, first I request Dr. Shantanu Roy, Associate Head, Prashant Nilayam Campus, to introduce the speaker for this session.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer my humble pranam at Swami's feet. So it's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Dr. R. Gopichandran. Dr. R. Gopichandran is a professor at NTPC School of Business, Noida, India, formerly director of Vigyan Prasar, an autonomous organization of DST, Government of India. Dr. R. Gopichandran did his BSc and MSc from Sri Sathya Sai College of Arts, Science and Commerces in the year 1982 and 84 respectively. He did his first PhD from Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning in the field of biosciences specialized in microbial ecology in the year 1988. He did another PhD in the interdisciplinary biosciences and chemical ecology from University of Madras in the year 1996. His quest for knowledge didn't stop there, as he received his graduate degree in the law from University of Gujarat in the year of 2008 while being an active professional. He is a highly accomplished professional in his career. He is playing an important role in creating blueprint when it comes to climate and sustainability environment related to issues at global, regional or bilateral and national levels. Dr. Gopichandran has contributed to 22 books at certain magnitude till date. He has very extensive contribution, whether publishing in scientific journal, conference proceedings, or article in newsletters, or contributing to the technical reports. Now, it will be incomplete if I mention some of the important points about Sir. Sir is the first batch of Swami's Valvikas group from 1967 onwards. He is the first batch pre-Sevadal 1977 to 1979. He is the first batch in the Brindavan campus 1979 to 82. He is the first batch 1980 to 84 MEC Prashanti campus. He is the first batch PhD in 1988 from Prashanti campus. He has blessing of staying with Bhagavan for full 10 years. Now it's a great honor that Dr. Gopichandran is amongst us today. Now I request Dr. R. Gopichandran to enlighten us with his valuable words. Over to Sir, please. It's a presentation.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Swami, please permit me to offer myself at your lotus feet, Swami. Swami, this presentation is also offered at your lotus feet. And that's because it has come out of a lifetime blessed entirely by you, Swami. And I hope I'll be able to rise up to your expectation. Swami, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity for standing before you once again. You have always, right from the time I was born, and I would continue, be with me all along. And on behalf of the family you have blessed me with, I offer my pranams to you and everyone I'm connected with. Most grateful to you, Swami. Swami, I suppose you will like this presentation because I'm your child. And more importantly, you'll give me the chance to serve a very important agenda that was set by Rajniben. Sir, our wonderful professor, sir, seated next to Rajni sir, Rajni ma'am, Sundareshan, and of course our dear brother Raghavendra, who was here this morning. The most important takeaway for all of us here, based on the discussions we have had so far, is to acknowledge what our motherland expects of us insofar as science is concerned. Please mark, it is Article 51AH of the Constitution. India is the only country in the world that asks her citizens to understand and practice scientific temper. No other country in the world asks her citizens, his or her citizens. It's an enormous window of opportunity to therefore infuse scientific temper through our learning here. And scientific temper in the context of whatever we are discussing here means three things. One is to first acknowledge the landscape of knowledge that is present before us. More importantly, which is aspect number 2, Sundareshan, to clearly acknowledge what are the limits and limitations of what we know, the boundaries of knowledge. And the third important aspect of it is to say there are newer frontiers. I'll have to understand systems as a whole, and I'm just a small part of it. Therefore, scientific temper implies humility. It also means understanding, preparedness to be able to ask the right questions, Now, I placed 9 important aspects here. One simple thing I'll not do is to read out from the slides. No, I'll not do that at all. But to be sounding scientific, which is at the core of the agenda that we are discussing here, to look at the convergence of principles of sustainability and businesses insofar as chemicals are concerned, we are asking an important question here today about what is the unfinished agenda. We have been teaching students, we are well known in the field for our, based on our credibility, based on our work. But then in the context of chemicals management, what is critical? Chemicals that don't react at the local level disperse across the globe. And please remember, the globe has got 2 freezers, the Arctic and the Antarctic, like a refrigerator. Chemicals that go across the globe converge, condense, accumulate in the colder parts of the globe. There are large number of evidences which have shown this as a fact. And when temperatures rise in those reservoirs and when there are other chemical changes, they get redispersed. Please understand, being scientifically tempered also means understanding the foundations of science, the principles of truth. We have all assembled after lunch, and one important thing we need to do is, after lunch, is the art of looking busy. Let's hope, we will be able to derive something out of this interaction as we progress. The framework I wish to place before our institute as students of sciences particularly, and with the emerging importance of management, is to recognize that everything starts with science, science and science investigations. And what is central to this is a cause and the effect relationship. We've got greenhouse gases, they are responsible for rise in temperatures. We've got persistent organic pollutants in the environment, they later spring up and they create all kinds of resistance mechanisms in organisms. The cause and the effect relationship is critical. Again, empirical evidences. There is a whole continuum, And what we need to recognize now beyond the sciences is this important aspect. When scientific evidences are placed before us, management arises through the interplay of regulations, market instruments, and institutional mechanisms. Regulations, market instruments, and institutional mechanisms. Therefore, our students, be it management students, they must know about global environmental challenges. It will be a classic thing, and therefore, for the attention of the Vice Chancellor, Swami, with your permission, I think we must have a course on multilateral environmental agreements. When our students expand businesses, I'm sure our brothers who come from even biotechnology and other areas, it could be even businesses like energy storage, transport, newer materials, all of these definitely will create business opportunities. Under which circumstances we have to know about what are our compliance requirements and what is expected of our partners in other parts of the world. So Sundareshan, one important takeaway will be to have a course on multilateral environmental agreements. And this could be in the School of Management, but then students of sciences could also participate in it. And students of sciences could have modules, special modules on these aspects. This is a critical and a very important emerging area. Please remember, incidentally, before I go further, I wish to share an interesting experience. Swami allowed. Thank you, Swami. Pranams. It was one of those Dashara times when Swami sent word that 4 of us must go to the green room when the Navratri Yajna was happening. It was a morning. 4 of us, Sanjay Sani, Sandeepan Chatterjee, myself and Abhishek Dubey. 4 of us, Swami sent word for. So we went into the green room. And what did Swami do? Swami said, hey, you 4 have to speak during this Dashara time. What will you speak about? We said, Swami, whatever you tell us. And then Swami gave us 2 wonderful lessons in speaking. He said, if somebody tells you, speak for half an hour, stop in 20 minutes. Don't keep people guessing about when will you stop. Extremely important. And the second beautiful lesson was, he said, you would have heard people speak a lot. Do not repeat points which others would have spoken. Always share your own experiences directly. It was an amazing, interaction with Swami, that morning. So the 4 of us were there, and I wish to therefore practice what Swami said by introducing or building on what our wonderful brothers spoke this morning. Please remember, as students of this institution, carry that spirit which I said of the Article 51 AH on your shoulders. Critical. And equally important is in this domain of management called a case approach. Cases are stories, and these stories are fit into this framework here. Define what the challenge is, what are the present solutions to it, what comes out of implementing those solutions, what are the results, but what are the other spin-offs, the impacts. And when you interpret the challenge which is in front of you, please look at what is the present level of knowledge. Do people have the right attitudes to implement them? What are the skills? And what are the ingrained habits? It's called the CASH framework. The CASH and this challenge, solution, results and impacts. This morning, we were introduced to things like membrane systems and what were all the challenges within them. Our brother Durjati spoke about packaging systems. Giridhar spoke about the nexus, about the EV, he gave this example, and the health sector, and he covered all of these. He mentioned an interesting example of the tunnels and how, which means industry is waiting to grab. And at that time I intervened, I said, it's not as if industry is waiting to grab. You know, they also know what the challenges are, but are they really prepared to look the challenges in the eye? That's a very, very important aspect of management. And that takes me further beyond what they said, They were absolutely right when they spoke about the environmental challenges. And can you imagine these challenges originated way back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. The classic example, a case, is of what is called the silent spring. And the silent spring thing is about the pesticides that are in the environment and they come up later. It's a quiet spring, but then they have their impacts all along. Another fantastic example is of the ozone climate nexus. What is the challenge with the ozone climate nexus? When we found that the ozone layer is depleting, and I've got the courage to speak with you about it because I was assisting what is called the Compliance Assistance Program. The United Nations Environment Program, as part of its ozone work, created a unique program. Please mark this. It's called the Compliance Assistance Program, CAP. And what did they say? They said if countries are expected to comply, let us help them develop policies, understand what are the technologies, options, and so on and so forth. I had the joy of assisting the Compliance Assistance Program for the last 25 years, working at the regional and at the global levels from within India. And therefore, that gives me the courage to speak about the ozone climate nexus. You know what happened in the case of ozone? When we wanted to find alternatives, we said we do not have the alternatives. And therefore, the world community started working on alternatives. There is a classic paper, sir, Janardhan Garu, which says there is a database of thousands of compounds. And out of the thousands of compounds, the alternative should not deplete the ozone layer was the first criterion. The second criterion was it should not be having a long residence time in the atmosphere. And therefore, we landed with one interesting alternative called hydrochlorofluorocarbons. And after we released them into the environment, we suddenly found they are global warming. And therefore, the third screen was introduced. And what was the lesson in this case? We started with a solution, but we did not know what the larger challenges could be. And now we are saying, let us look at hydrocarbon alternatives. And then came an amazing, amazing management intervention. And that is a nexus between science and technology. Nexus between science, technology, and management. Rajniben, can you imagine what did India say when she signed the Montreal Protocol? She said, I am prepared to participate in the Montreal Protocol with 3 guiding principles. And they are management principles. India said, I will sign the protocol only if it means minimal economic dislocation. Number 2, she said, it should be only with minimal obsolescence costs, which means you can't ask me to adopt new technology all of a sudden. I must be able to use technology that is already there. Therefore, the obsolescence cost should be minimal. And number 3, she said, I should be able to maximize indigenous production. Are these not related to chemicals and chemicals adaptability? And this is the most important interface, the applications of principles of management with respect to global environmental management. India's performance with the Montreal Protocol is seen as exemplary. And why is that so? Scientists from India have been at the forefront of identifying alternatives. They played a classic role. The Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, for instance, in the National Chemical Laboratory, Pune, IIT Delhi, we have all had scientists and engineers who are leading the identification of alternatives. Therefore, it's not as if the developed country is pushing us. No, not at all. When we understand, therefore, science in an integrated and a clear manner, there is enormous scope for all of us to be able to work together. Therefore, Swami, with your permission, the ozone case, the ozone climate nexus, is a very interesting example which the School of Management here should understand. And if we create this module on environment, a module on sustainability, it must contain interesting lessons from aspects like these. And then we go further ahead. If we have to work on the models of environmental management, there are more than 200 scenarios. More than 200 scenarios the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change uses. And what is the takeaway from it? The takeaway is Can we develop those skills to be able to fit in those right parameters, number one, and most importantly, gravitate the parameters to local relevance. Gravitate those parameters to local relevance. And this calls for a deep understanding of science, applications of modeling systems, and most importantly, as I said, those three converging principles, minimal economic dislocation and so on and so forth. We started with this case of absolute scientific evidence. Please understand. There is a whole body of literature, whole body of evidences. Maybe after this session, you all must do an interaction with this called the eyes on the earth. Eyes on the earth. Can you see this? Eyes on the earth. It's a beautiful portal. Look at it. It will show you the satellites that are going all around the world, documenting information on the occurrence and distribution of gases. You got moment-to-moment records of all of this. Fantastic experience. Do we have the courage? Has the industry got the courage to accept these scientific evidences? Is a very important management question. How do we bring them on board is therefore critical. And our work, our own work, we are all responsible for this. We have put in billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the environment. And this is an absolute fact. We said we will start with principles of science. And based on whatever was discussed this morning, I will not again read out from the slide. And interesting, this shows what are all the kinds of initiatives. For instance, more than 150 companies around the world with about $70 trillion assets, are all willing, and they're participating, guiding the global economy. And what are they doing? Manufacturing, producing chemicals. And if we are able to guide those systematically, with understanding these principles and practice, there are a large number of such examples, which we will see quickly as we progress. The latest on all of this is what is called the carbon budget. I have given you the sources of this information. Giridhar was speaking about, what is the volume of reductions we'll have to do, and again, this is based on science. I will not read out, and I'm saying that for the third time. The idea is to say there is absolute science which is guiding these actions, climate actions. It's a very important question we need to ask. At the interface of science and technology, there are wonderful examples of how Sundareshan industry has gone ahead. They are all listed on the right. But why did they have to take this maverick approach, which is what we all have to understand? When the interests of individuals or of countries are not served, members rarely act in common interest. If there is no moral or legal pressure. And what is worse, if the individual interests and their businesses are harmed, whatever be the moral pressure and whatever be the legal framework by which they should get into action, they will always find an excuse to not participate in that kind of an action. It's critical. It's critical, therefore, to know this very important dynamic. And therefore we said we will create multilateral environmental agreements to help overcome these. Therefore, the school, has to, after all, finally, our institute must have to understand that if you have to create an impact in the area of sustainability, know the nuances, how people interact around the world. Please mark this name, Krista Nadakavu-Karen Schaffer. She came out with the classic framework. She said, let us go beyond things like, when will a country intervene? If my neighboring country is suffering problems of climate change, don't you think it's my moral right to participate? Or will I say, I have got a moral option of not participating, and that is through this illegality of intervention. Have we thought of all of this before? This therefore means, please remember, climate change and protection against climate change impacts is now crossing the normal boundaries of thinking like, if there is war crime or if there is ethnic cleansing, only then we will intervene. No, she is saying that climate change is also an important challenge. Therefore, please work on these, which means the School of Management here has to understand these principles of communities coming together in the context of global management. And why does the global environment face a problem? Because of chemical loading. And where do these chemicals come from? They come from processes which do not have green principle applications. And therefore, the foundations of all of this in the area of chemicals management is green chemistry, principles of cleaner production, waste minimization, energy efficiency enhancement, emission reduction, eco-industrial networking, and so on. We will look at some of those as we progress. The latest which we found this morning is about what we mentioned to Durjati. In November 23, the draft of this plastics agreement has come up. 23. So you can understand the importance of your nanomaterials, plastics, recovery, recycling, and so on. Where is the science in all of this? The state of art is what is called planetary boundaries. Planetary boundaries. There are 9 planetary boundaries. And literature says we have crossed 7 out of the 9 planetary boundaries. And that is by the paper there right on top by Rockstrom et al. You can access that paper from there. And as part of management, we have listed a whole lot of money instruments. Our institute needs to work on reality checks about the feasibility of market instruments. And that is to say, what should be the level of rewards when the level of compliance goes up? Can we create those mechanisms in our country? We need sector-specific assessments. So one interesting thing that can happen after this symposium will be to, with the help of, let's say, because I gave this in a small note to Raghavendra, if you look at HDFC or the S Bank, they support a lot of these programs on sustainability. Can we do a series of symposia on what are the green chemistry, green production principles and practices across various sectors? And what are the boundaries of technologies? What are the challenges with respect to the cost economic benefits? I think a very important outcome of this deliberation should be a series of such roundtables across the country to produce what are called reality check documents. And once the reality check is done, Sundareshan, something called a test bed can happen. A test bed is when we define some solutions, we find out what is the sustainability of those solutions. How well will they show results over what period of time, and what will be the boundaries of those applications. So reality checks followed by test beds will provide a lot of empirical evidence from within the Indian system, and they will be useful for countries with comparable circumstances. This will be a very, very important takeaway, from this symposium. This is what I was referring to. It is not as if we are talking about this just today. Way back in 1998, principles of green chemistry were introduced. And initially we used to talk of the traditional principles of production, but today in 2022-23, we have gone into what are called green and biomimetic technologies. Biomimetic was also the foundation for eco-industrial networking, which is about making use of, let's say, an acidic waste stream from an industrial estate to neutralize alkaline waste streams. Symbiosis. We've got high BOD wastes. Can they be made use of within an industrial estate to be able to generate energy? Lots of such examples. So we have moved into such biomimetic from traditional ones to all this. And there is a unique principle of science with respect to materials, time degradation of what is called triggered instability of compounds. triggered instability of compounds. It's an interesting paradigm, triggered instability. An amazing publication is something which you all must definitely look at, which is what I referred to. Can you imagine there's a periodic tables of just the elements of green and sustainable chemistry? It is in this publication. A beautiful 2 sets of periodic tables which are mapped what could all be the green practices. Amazing publication. You must lay your hands on this. And that helps us with what we have been discussing here into one extremely important visioning, and that is living in harmony with nature. 2050 is what we are targeting for. Is not management of chemicals, biological diversity, microbial diversity, delayed induced resistance, rapid induced resistance, and whatnot. All of these are essential ingredients of how biosystems react with each other. And that is mandated, as we said, in the Convention for Biological Diversity. Convention for Biological Diversity. I've given a couple of other sources. And you know what? Great. Before I go further, as Swami has very rightly said, Swami said, never imagine that people sitting in front of you don't know what you're saying. Endro Mahanubhavalu, Andarikina Vandanamulu. Please. If you find what I'm saying is adding value to the discussion, I'll be happy to proceed. And if you think you already know what I'm saying, you can ask me to shut up. I have no problems on that. But what is important is to make sure that it is an useful engagement as we progress. I hope you're finding these submissions interesting for you to understand the larger landscape of science, technology, management, and therefore holistic improvement of our environment. Shall I proceed further? Great. Don't be good to me. I wish to also share an interesting story, and you might ask, why am I saying all this? I've mentioned this story many times in different places. I imagine you will like the story. I read this story around 35-40 years ago in the Reader's Digest. And the story goes like this. And before I go further, how much time do I have? You said 10 minutes. 20 minutes. The story went like this. An American, and I read this in the Reader's Digest. An American had once won a huge international award. The Japanese went to him and said, please come to Japan and speak about your work. The American said, my work is, if I can use the word for the second time, Durjati used this word in his talk, humongous. He said, my work is humongous. I will need 3 hours to make my presentation. Professor Rajni just now said 10 minutes, sorry, 20. 3 hours. The Japanese said, 3 hours, no problem, sir. Then he said, Meeku Japanese, English telidu kada, Japanese lo evarana translate cheyali, so inka 3 gantase padtundi. 6 hours kurchuntara meeru? Adigaru. Will you sit for 6 hours? The Japanese said, no problems, we'll sit for 6 hours. They took him to Japan, and the American, have you heard this story before? No. The American started making his presentation. At the end of 1 hour, the Japanese stood up and completed the entire translation in 10 seconds. The American was zapped. He asked, what is this? He said, sir, aapka presentation finish ho gaya, so please get into your second presentation. At the end of the second presentation, the translation was again for 10. And the whole thing got over in 3 hours and 30 seconds. Our American friend was not only zapped, he was shaking because he had to shake hands with 1,000 people. He asked his friend, what the hell was the translation? It seems the first translation said, our American friend has not spoken anything new. The second translation said, I don't expect him to say anything new in the third presentation. And at the end of the third presentation, he said, I was absolutely correct. There is nothing new in what he said. This was a great learning I picked up in communication. It's therefore very important as part of even scientific temper to be able to make use of our time, in a manner that is useful for us. And therefore this prayer. I'll quickly therefore take you across. Giri and Durjati also referred to a ground swell, what is called a ground swell of people's action. There is a classic publication by the Asian Development Bank. Please mark this, by the Asian Development Bank. It says something like courts at your doorstep, something to that effect, where courts go behind companies, that are not compliant. Don't you think it's important for our students to understand the dynamics of compliance vis-a-vis legislation, regulations in our country? It is absolutely important. These are all classic examples of how that is gaining a lot of momentum. And from where? There are 5 important areas where the climate change cases are all related. One is, about the policy, damages litigation, 3, 4, 5. And where do these climate change impacts happen? Within the troposphere, with implications for the stratosphere. And this is because of loading of our gases. And again, we go back to principles of chemistry. Therefore, the scope is really enormous insofar as this interface is concerned. Science, technology, environment, and so on. And please remember, we are in the year 2023. It is not as if all of this was not discussed earlier. Close to 103 years ago, all of this started in 1920s, and that was against apartheid. It started with socially responsible investments, 1920. But then later, a lot of momentum insofar as environmental action happened only towards the late 60s and the late 70s, late 60s and the 70s. One of the classic examples, Sundareshan, was what is called the Trail Smelter case. Trail Smelter. Trail is the name of a place in Canada. Sulfur dioxide emissions travel from across Canada to the US. And Rajniben, that was almost the first time when transboundary movement of gases was understood. And that is because water bodies on the North American side became acidic. Crops were getting destroyed, and they were wondering where and how. They found that sulfur dioxide emissions from across the border were responsible for this. Principles of science, practice. I found this reference this morning when I was seated here in the hall. There are major transitions, leaps ahead insofar as the frameworks of analysis are concerned. We started with the first one, hazard characterization, and then we said let's go into the ecotoxicological assessments, and now we are sticking to the toxicological groupings as they say. I've given you the reference 2022, and these again go back to what are called endocrine active or disruptive compounds. I will very quickly rush you to this very, very important reference. I hope I'll be able to locate it. Where is that one with the Rockstrom reference? Great. Anyway, yeah. Swami, please pardon me. The Rockstrom reference very clearly speaks about novel compounds in the environment. Novel compounds in the environment. We have had no idea about them. They are hormonomimetic compounds and other compounds. Novel entities, to be precise. They are called novel entities. Here is the Rockstrom reference. Let's look at some other management principles today. When you cross Andhra Pradesh border and get into Karnataka, do you go about telling people that you have crossed the border? What do you get in your mobile phones? Welcome to Karnataka. Hyper transparency, this is called. We don't have to go about saying that I have not complied, I have complied. No, not at all. And what do hyper-transparency interventions look at? They look at the extent to which companies are erring on the wrong side about those two within brackets. This is state of art, hyper-transparency. Look at the green ones highlighted. This therefore means, what do we look at business today? It is called the social license concept. It's called the social license concept. You know, Sundareshan, this new jargon is what is called green hushing. Green hushing. Green hushing. We are saying something, but we are not really doing it. Green hushing. And we are able to make out when industries don't really implement them. Green hushing. It's a huge problem. When we therefore work on process audits, green chemistry, substitution of materials, material efficiency, with respect to climate, the latest management principle is called the social cost of carbon. And this has to be embedded in all the projects and activities. It's called the social cost of carbon. The amount of investments required to tackle 1 ton of carbon dioxide and therefore related impacts. The social cost of carbon, as it were. A large number of financial institutions are also involved in all of this. It is most likely, and I'm sure it is so, that people who are all with us virtually, and many of you here too, are aware of this latest intervention by the Securities and Exchanges Board of India. They have mandated the submission of what is called the BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. More than 1,000 companies have submitted the BRSR reports, and they're all available in the SEBI website. Anybody can look at them. Amazing. And that is the level of visibility. I will leave you with this important landscape of the kind of management interventions that happen. Giri referred to recovery, resource efficiency and recycling. We must know that the Niti Aayog has come out with a classic reference. It is the draft National Resource Efficiency Policy of 2019, where they speak of 6 kinds of interventions. 6 kinds of interventions. We are all familiar with reduce, reuse, recycle, but an interesting aspect of refurbishment has been introduced. Refurbish, which is to say that we will restore the used product with some minor alterations. Please look at the 6 interesting applications about what the national policy wants. There are some models of assessing how well we will have to evolve insofar as these minimization impacts are concerned. And these are all examples of how people from other parts of the world are actively involved in linking production, markets, environmental compliance, and regulations. And unless we are able to practice what we have been taught, the world will continue to have this problem. I will stop before you ask me to. No, sure.
Is there a concerted effort now that we are going to have the new national education policy? You think somewhere this, I don't think this is a domain specific, it needs to go everywhere. Is something happening around those lines because you are also serving in the any other policy making committees and decision making?
I'll only be
I will
pretending.
just
Yeah.
add one more question. When I was in a couple of months back in Austria and UK, even the food is being measured in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide emission. When we leave a fumid on, there is a saying that, okay, how much carbon dioxide emission is being wasted for nothing. Right? Even traveling here and there is being seen as a taboo right now. But in India, when I ask some very fairly intelligent people, nobody seems to know, okay, how do you even go back and calculate the carbon dioxide emission? So there is a huge gap, to be very honest. It's more of a, not a question, but putting it in front of you about what is your thought and what do we need to do to address that?
First of all, I cannot sound more intelligent than you, in the manner you articulated the problem. My presentation was focused at two levels. One is what should our own institute be doing to build the capacities of our students, and with the emerging center of excellence on sustainability. Therefore, that must contain, this a whole lot of things which we mentioned. I'll only be pretending if I say anything about any other efforts that are happening across the country with respect to this. But the school I come from, Swami, with your permission, where I teach now, the NTPC School of Business, is the energy sector specific area, and the school has taken conscious efforts, and which is why I'm not an energy guy, I'm an ecology kind of a person. Those days, Mahajan sir had introduced this course on applied habitat ecology, 1982 to 84 here. And that was the foundation. Can you imagine the year 1984 after we finished our MSc and we were asked to submit the concept note for PhD, Rajniben? There was hardly any literature available on the word models. Modeling of ecosystems in 1984 would see just one paper or one book somewhere. Why am I saying that? There are some initiatives in our country, as I said, the energy sector, public sector enterprises, and the related institutions. Indian Oil Corporation, for instance, has a school on petroleum management, if I'm right. So, they are building a lot of these concepts into it. We will be one of the prime movers, if we take a conscious effort to do that. I'm not able to answer better than this because I'm not part of any higher education initiative. No. One Shashank Shah, who is our own alumnus in the Niti Aayog, who handles higher education initiatives, will be able to answer it better. Sairam, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gopichandran. Having experienced both sciences and management, I believe it is a very vast amount of experience which you had shared with us all. So, moving on to the next talk. Now I request Dr. Ravi Kishore, Assistant Professor from Department of Chemistry, to introduce the next speaker.
Om Shri Sairam, offering my reverential pranams at Bhagavan's lotus feet. Today I am here to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Oruganti Srinivas. Dr. O. Srinivas is currently the director of Dr. Reddy's Institute of Life Sciences, popularly known as DRILS, Hyderabad. He is also the head of the Center for Process Research and Innovation, DRILS. He happens to be an alumnus of our university. He finished his 11th, 12th BSc and MSc from our esteemed university and later PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in 2004, and postdoctoral fellowship from Centre de Biophysique Moleculaire CNRS Ornelles, France during the period 2004 to 2006. From 2007 to 2008, he was senior scientist, GVK Biosciences, Hyderabad. From 2009 to 2010, he was senior research scientist, medicinal chemistry, Sai Advantium Pharma, Hyderabad. From 2010 till date, he has been the head of Center for Process Research and Innovation, DRILS. From 2016 to 18, he was deputy director of DRILS. In 2018, he was elevated to the position of director DRILS and has been the director since then. His achievements include Gold Medal for Academic Excellence in BSc Honours Chemistry by SSSIHL Institute of Higher Learning, 1997. Gold Medal for Academic Excellence in MSc Chemistry by SSSIHL Institute of Higher Learning, 97. He also received the Process Engineering and Chemistry Excellence Award in 2014 from DRILS. He is a member of many societies. Prominent ones include Groupe Français des Glucides, American Chemical Society, Expert Scientific Review Committee on Active Pharmaceutical Ingredients, API, Complex Impurity Cell, AAPS, Pharmaxil Innovation Desk, University of Hyderabad Technology Incubation Incubator Advisory Board, FABA Finishing School Advisory Board, CSIR API for Affordable Healthcare. He has published over 50 patents and 35 research papers in leading international journals. He is actively engaged in academia-industry collaborations in the pharmaceutical sector in India and has been championing industry-oriented process chemistry programs at DRILS Hyderabad. He is credited with setting up an industry-oriented chemistry research unit at DRILS. He has actively contributed to several successful medicinal chemistry collaborations with several pharma and biotech companies involving hit-to-lead identification and lead optimization for different therapeutic areas. With this brief introduction, I request Dr. O. Srinivas to deliver his talk. He will be speaking on the topic towards greener lab and sustainability. Thank you.
Not there. It's fine. Om Shri Sairam. My talk will be towards greener lab and sustainability, but before that, next slide, please. Okay. I think I'm coming here after a very long time, which should not have been the case, but although I've been connected with Swami and his students closely in trying to address some of the research problems that we all have. So, humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagwan. There is a lot of inspiration that we see over the years about what we have learned, what we are supposed to do, and there's a lot of directions. Swami is like a lighthouse. We know what is the direction. We just need to make sure that we look for the light. But today I would like to also capture a certain aspect of Swami where he also is the one who creates, he sustains, and sometimes he can destroy. We have been very fortunate. My brother Ravi Kishore, we have all been there in the same batch, benefited greatly under the mentorship of all our teachers. But it also happened that from 11th, 1991, 93, 92, and 93, so when we shifted to Brindavan campus, because all the school boys from Puttaparthi invariably used to be shifted to Brindavan campus. Swami had a divine design which we did not know. Swami also decided to shift to Brindavan campus. So for all practical purposes, Swami was there in Brindavan for a very long time, almost 2 years. As my brother Ravi Kishore says, Kulwant Hall construction also kind of triggered the extended stay of Swami. So we used to have Trai sessions and many other things. But there were also moments where Swami used to be a little bit unhappy with his students. It is obvious unhappiness or unhappiness with a reason to teach us. So we also saw the more difficult side of things where Swami used to come. We were invisible in front of him. He used to look through us. We did not exist. There were moments, and I remember a lot of 1008 times Sai Gayatri, multiple cycles, and one fine day, it looks like everything seemed to be fine, right? So we did see the tough part of Swami also. So he can be a Lord Shiva, he can also destroy. But somewhere in between this Trimurti, the word sustainability comes with a very clear definition. Everything gets created, everything has to get destroyed, and how we kind of sustain it without creating an element of destruction within the sustainability is a very important aspect. So I come from a place called Dr. Reddy's Institute of Life Sciences, which was set up in 2004 by the then government of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Chandrababu Naidu, along with a very powerful industry veteran, Dr. Kallamanji Reddy, the founder of Dr. Reddy's. They decided to start an institute like a Weizmann Institute in Israel or a Scripps Institute in the US in order to basically address the innovation needs of the companies around the Hyderabad cluster, rest of the Indian ecosystem in all aspects of drug discovery development. So this is a beautiful institute located right now in the University of Hyderabad campus. University also happens to be one of the strategic partners. Today my talk will be a bit more focused on some of certain aspects of chemistry because I am talking to a set of very young generation of future scientists, chemists of the future. And so I will try to share with you not learnings from what we have done great things and not done any great things, but we are trying to transfer the responsibility of doing the great things to you. Every 10 years, human beings come with an advanced chip. We have Apple iPhone 4, 5, now what is it, 15? 15 or 16, maybe, I don't know. 15, I think. So it comes with an advanced chip. You are all coming automatically with an advanced chip. So you are all been designed to solve more complex problems than we typically can handle. So I will give you a perspective. I will give you a set of problems that you can choose to address, right? Because there are so many problems that are waiting to be solved. So there are various sectors of pharmaceutical industry, in the chemical industry. I think today we have had our other brothers have shared a very important perspective, but let me focus a bit more on the pharmaceutical side of things because that's where I basically work. So there are two things, please remember, for during the course of my talk: drug substance, drug product. Drug substance is the active chemical ingredient that goes into the medicine. So and the drug product is the along with the excipients, the colors, the sweeteners, whatever may be there. So syrup is a drug product. The ingredient Dolo, paracetamol, is a drug substance. And Hyderabad happens to be a place where more than 400 companies which are FDA approved are there. A lot of chemistry happens. We essentially export a lot of drugs, including antivirals, to the rest of the world. So when we look into an active pharmaceutical ingredient, typically it is discovered by somebody in a company, and post its discovery, it's called a new chemical entity, and then there is an approval post the clinical trials, and then the drug is NC becomes an API. But what is very important is the API itself. There are different chemical routes which are typically considered in order to synthesize, and one has to apply certain parameters in order to become able to come up with a better route of synthesis for various reasons. First and foremost, depending on the nature of the drug, a diabetic drug is a multi-tonnage volume requirement. A cardiovascular drug is a very high volume requirement. Oncology products are invariably not very high volumes. So based on that, the chemistry has to be designed accordingly. So there are three words called route selection, process development. Eventually it has to go into the plant. So from the batch study, plant, and product launch. Looks like a slide, but I don't think it has impressed anybody. So let me tell you the story here. How many of you, I'm not sure, Venkatachalam sir is still the, okay. So you know Venkatachalam sir, all of you. After I started looking into process chemistry, he became one of my inspirations in the serious sense of the term. Venkatachalam sir had the ability to translate a small recipe on scale with the same consistency. And his process was resistant to the climate, irrespective of the season, same taste. Irrespective of the number of students, the volume could be scaled up, no compromise on the quality, the same taste, same texture, same color. My guess was he probably did not have a very robust supply chain giving him the same ingredients from time to time. But the end product was a well-defined sambar, rasam, or one of those very typical, with the drumstick, there used to be a curry. So Venkatachalam sir. So the whole idea is the life of a chemist is essentially converting a recipe into a restaurant. Right? And imagine you go to a restaurant, every day the taste changes, the restaurant loses its identity. So the concept of quality, the concept of reproducibility, the concept of scaling up is something like how do we translate a recipe into scale. So I think that might summarize the context of what I'm trying to say. So most important thing is the route selection process is extremely important because we'll have to consider whether we are getting good yields in a chemical transformation, whether the process can be scaled up, whether it will form the product or it will blast on our face, whether the environmental health and other guidelines are being met, is it cheap enough, quality, and also at the same time of intellectual property. I may have a process which Professor Lakshmi has already kind of blocked and he may not allow me to use this process. I may have to come up with a different process because he has a 20-year hold on the IP that he has created. So now this is something which is very important. But also if you look into from a chemistry perspective, please try to relate to every experiment that you do in the lab. When we start a reaction, there is something called a reaction space. There are some very specific chemistry aspects which I'll come to a little bit later. We design the route, then we kind of create some approach, retrosynthesis. And once we design, okay, these are the transformations, I want to come from A to some A prime. Then we also look at different reagents that can be used and how do you go about it. Then at the same time, there are additional parameters about the process optimization. How do you control the reaction? Is it room temperature, low temperature, high temperature? Right? There are multiple conditions which fall in the process space. And then there comes the other element called the processing space. After the reaction, the most important aspect is the workup. Many times, disasters happen in chemistry, material gets lost because people don't know how to do the workup, the processing, isolation, be it a natural product, be it in chemistry. Interestingly, this slide was not designed for chemists. It was designed for a set of AI/ML people that I was trying to recruit. And I had to tell them that we do the same thing which is probably equally exciting to you. And there was no way I could teach them chemistry, nor they were interested to listen to me. So this slide was created because we started looking at each of this as a data point. Each can have multiple data points. You can load it with a lot of data and start looking into a bigger trend data about looking into optimization, trend data, looking at some statistical approaches, linear, nonlinear regression methods, so on and so forth. But what is most important is, as I just kind of alluded to the story of Venkatachalam sir about his creativity about creating the process, there was a very good scientist from BMS called Rajappa Vaidyanathan who also said that scaling up a reaction is not just taking something in a small RB flask, putting it in a big RB flask. So one of the most important processes is route scouting is extremely important because route scouting is a stage where you actually put the Janam Kundali of a process, right? You have to put the entire horoscope of how it is going to happen. You're going to write it. If you do a mistake there, repercussions will show up at a later date. So route scouting, converting a synthetic route to a process is very important. It is like making a small dish versus scaling it up on a bigger side. But there are 3 E's. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I think thankfully nowadays I see kindergarten also they're trying to popularize. Maybe they're trying to genetically induce this factor as an epigenetic change for us to appreciate this. But the 3 E's that might matter here are economically viable. It's got to be cost competitive. I will not say cheap. Cheap is not the right word. It has to be cost competitive. Environmentally responsible. It should be benign. The third is it has to be efficient, and efficiency can be defined as safety, reproducibility, to produce high qualities, robustness, controlling certain impurities, so on and so forth. And there are some set of criteria which essentially define some convergence, chemocatalytic scale-up. Now, what is the figure that is shown here, the intent behind the figure is when you have two routes of synthesis, you need to compare which route is better, which route is inferior, which route has certain advantages. So sometimes what happens is any route where there's a convergence, multiple intermediates come from multiple places and then you assemble the final molecule, they are convergent as compared to a linear thing. There is a lot of cost of goods calculation which gets inflated in a linear route. Wherever there is a chiral transformation, wherever there is an asymmetric synthesis, it is always beneficial as compared to a stoichiometric use of reagent. The process has to be scalable, it has to be safe, it has to be hazard free because we don't want to have accidents, and most importantly we need to come out of Professor Lakshminath's patent. We don't want to, because he should not sue us tomorrow for infringing his patent. So this is something that is very important. Now let me just, to give a small example about how a plant might look like, there are different departments which happen as a part of the product development strategy. But then when we look at the different formulations, or as I mentioned, all the drug substances, there are different aspects to this, whether they are injectable, whether it's a syrup, whether it's a tablet, solid oral solid dosage form, so on and so forth. It's a very complicated looking diagram where different reactions happen, the material moves, it gets mixed up, so on and so forth. So essentially it gets a bit more complicated when we look into the manufacturing setup of how things are actually getting manufactured. But if you look into specifically the reactor itself, it does not look like a conventional RB flask. You will have an agitator, then you have to have a kind of a utility to cool it or heat it, then you have to have the utility lines and so on and so forth. The material of construction is very important, whether to choose glass or glass lines, stainless steel or hastolite, depending upon acidic materials, a lot of considerations essentially going. I'm just trying to kind of draw your attention to the fact that a lot of chemical engineering design principles happen once chemistry is developed. Okay, and now today's topic is how do we address the sustainability problem. But I want to kind of tell you that there is a bigger problem which is increasing the entire challenge itself by several notches higher. Today, none of us are talking about making paracetamol in a sustainable manner, ibuprofen in a sustainable manner. No, those are easier problems to solve. Just look at this. 2012 to 2021, I've just missed last 2 years. When I look into all the small molecules that are approved as therapeutics, 29% of them actually have 1 or 2 fluorines. And around 45% have more than 1 chiral center. They are diastereomers, chirally pure diastereomers. Molecules have become complex, right? So it is like asking Usain Bolt to run on ice without shoes. It's very complex. As I said, that's why again we have a lot of faith in you, because you come with a bit better advanced chip. Your processing capabilities should be given complex problems to solve, right? So if you look into the statistical thing, it's all very complex. New drugs. And why do we need, just look at Indian population, 1.4 billion. All the people are becoming old, quality of life is not great, health problems are coming, the need for new drugs, new diseases are manifesting, treatment has to happen. So we cannot say that we don't want medicines. We need medicines to keep a certain quality of life, if not curing the disease. So many of them have been, recently been approved for a variety of unmet medical conditions by FDA. And this is some data which I want to show you from 2020. Very interesting structures. All of you maybe, some of you may be working on some of the intermediates or molecules. Quite impressive. But look at this. How many of you know that an acrylamide can be present on a molecule and it's a covalent inhibitor, so that it just does not bind to the enzyme pocket and go away. It actually goes and binds to one of the cysteines. So this is a class of Bruton kinase inhibitors called BTK inhibitors. Ibrutinib happens to be one of them, where you actually have an acrylamide. That makes the entire chemistry but more complex. Then you look at this. This molecule, I think it's not carbon friendly. It has more nitrogens. More nitrogens than carbon. And one of the immediate problems, more nitrogens, more oxygens than carbon. It can have a thermal effect. It can explode upon pressure, or it can have, it's a high energy kind of a thing. The accidents can happen during purifications. Look at this molecule. You have a methyl at a very strange position. It is highly epimerizable. And most importantly, this is not a conventional diastereomer. Everybody, we would have learned from Sundareshan sir about the chirality, right? RS and all that. But here we are talking about RS chirality, we are also talking about heteroisomerism, and it is locked in a certain conformation. So the chirality, the diastereomer comes from a fixed heteroisomerism configuration and a chiral center. And this molecule, honestly, it is crazy that how can somebody actually do it? Maybe this is binding to the enzyme target. Look at this, gem difluoro groups. They are very tricky to make. Again, increasing the chemistry quotient. Sofosbuvir. I have learned during my own stint with pharmaceutical industry that chiral phosphorus is very important. There used to be a professor in IISc Bangalore who used to work on chiral phosphines, and nobody wanted to join him because we thought that was not an interesting area. Now but if you look at chiral phosphorus in remdesivir, this phosphorus is chiral. It's called like RS, RP kind of a scenario. Then same thing, it is also found in tenofovir. And look at remdesivir, this also has a chiral phosphorus. So this has added a new dimension to the complexity. So you have a diastereomer, so many chiral centers, one extra chiral phosphorus, and that is going to be your real drug. And then there are molecules like this, including eribulin, which has 19 chiral centers, a 2 to the power of 19 chiral centers. Thankfully, we have been fortunate to get involved in the synthesis of eribulin from 2012 at various aspects, and I was also working with different teams. Dr. Reddy's launched filed the DMF. They have also filed the ANDA for the formulation. I think the injectable would be available pretty soon based on the business launch. But this is a 19 chiral center with more than 70 chemical transformations, no biotransformations. So as I said, the whole idea here is we are staring at a very strong chemical complexity. There is a lot of unfinished problems to be solved. Now the question to this august audience is, sustainability is a challenge. Earlier speakers and brothers have said we are not being sustainable enough. But now I'm trying to tell you that fine, sustainability, the chemistry problems is equally more complex. How do you address complex chemistry problems and yet be sustainable? Right? This is the problem statement. So one of the things that I was thinking on the last few years and also during the COVID time was we have to do something more meaningful in life. So we have to literally reinvent the way we think about chemistry. Chemistry has to take a lot of encouragement from other disciplines, and how do we capitalize on the learnings from other areas and then integrate in the chemistry and in our own processes. So one of the areas we thought was, okay, the challenge during the COVID was every time we made remdesivir process in the lab, there was no team to optimize it further before it can go to the plant. So we had to literally develop processes which can directly translate from the lab to the plant, and I was aware about the risks. Something may not have been studied for its safety or any other issues, and it can actually be pretty much nasty when we suddenly scale it up without adequate data. So this was something which was there, and there were a set of committees with some very senior people, and we were trying to look at it as a very strategic problem. So the first thing I did was we looked into a set of reactions which are typically used in the pharmaceutical industry. Right, this is like a pass mark or a distinction. If you can do these reactions, you get 70%. And you can go about doing these transformations. Now, then we thought, okay, how do we try to have the greener versions of these reactions or improved versions of these reactions, right? We have to have a starting point, understand, do an analysis, then go to the greener version. So we started looking into different reactions, including certain reactions which are some of the finest reactions in chemistry, but unfortunately they're not employed in manufacturing purely due to safety reasons, like ozonolysis. So during the course of last 13 years, I think we've been fortunate to work on a variety of products, and this experience has essentially translated into, it has given catalog of what all bad things we can do where we could have been better. And but it also gave us a very important sense of the complexity, the chemical landscape complexity of what we were dealing with. So eventually, as I said, the lab, the research and development, when we make a process, it has to go into manufacturing. Look at the paradox. The same word plant, if you look at a green plant, tree, we feel happy. If you look into a plant from a chemical plant, there is an automatic feeling that it would be very polluting. And this is unfortunately still a reality. So this is where, as our earlier brothers have also alluded to or detailed the greener chemistry aspects, I think there is a lot more that we have to really, the implementation of green chemistry is not like religious textbook that we read it and forget it. It has to be practiced. right? Now, how do we practice this? There are no clear answers. So this is I will suggest maybe this is a good review to read by the author of Organic Process Research Development, Kai Rosen. He himself is a very accomplished chemist. What he basically said is, I'll not read it out for you, but essentially many times we talk about one aspect of a process which is very green and rest of the things are not green, and we only talk about the green chemistry aspect of what we have done. So it's a bit of a very introspective article. I'll suggest you can go through it. But look at the green chemistry principles. One of the things is, first is prevention. Why create a pollution? It is always better to prevent waste than to treat or clean it up. And so nowadays the entire focus of green chemistry is focusing on one aspect, which is on the waste, creation of waste, management of waste, recycling of waste, or finding a use for the waste so that it is no longer considered as a waste, which is called circularity. And as we can see, although the pharma industry is not the real culprit, but if you look into the E factor, which is the kilo waste per kilo product, the pharma industry is on the higher side, but the other, the fine chemical industries are around 0.1, 1 to 5, fine chemicals 5 to 50. But basically it means that for every 1 kilo of a drug, which eventually maybe forms some thousands of tablets, we are producing at least 250 kilos of a waste, which can be quite detrimental to the person who is producing the drug. So these are the principles of green chemistry. I think you're all already aware. There are around 12 principles, and then there are also something called the principles of green engineering. And along these lines, we have been fortunate to interact with a set of very well-recognized scientists all over the globe. Professor Ellen Cree from Belgium, Professor Stephen Matlin from Imperial, Professor Gordon Mehta, who was the Vice Chancellor and Director of IISc Bangalore. So they have formed a group called C4S, Chemists for Sustainability. There is one more, Professor Ellen Hoff, who was one of the earlier founders of the German Organic Chemistry Society. So they have been writing a variety of articles, and sometimes I'll recommend you can please read it. There are a lot of very interesting thoughts and thought-provoking ideas. But what I like is this thing that waste does not exist. It is only post-trash. So we need to stop thinking of any materials as being waste, and the very concept of waste matter should disappear. The whole idea here is, sometimes pharmaceutical industry can produce a lot of waste. For example, in ibuprofen process, aluminum chloride becomes aluminum hydroxide. Now this aluminum hydroxide has to end up somewhere. Now if there is a nearby cement industry or any other industry, you can actually pull up this entire material, and so that essentially the material goes hips and jumps from one place to the other, but it is not being discarded. So the concept of circular economy is to build a circularity where every material can be used at the appropriate place. However, it is not easy, because you need to have a pharmaceutical industry talking to a cement industry, or a construction industry, or a plastic industry talking to some biofermentation industry. But the concept of circularity is coming. Here, actually it was the other day during a discussion for a CSR committee, Professor Mehta was with all of us, and there were some very senior people, and he, during the meeting, before the meeting, as always, he likes to teach us something. So he was telling something very interesting. He said, do you know the concept of black carbon? Anybody? Green carbon and blue carbon. There are three. This is what I understand. Black carbon, as you can guess, it's from petroleum industry. Comes with a limited source. Green carbon can come from plant-derived materials, coconuts, oleic acids, whatever. There is an untapped potential of blue carbon, which is the carbon which is highly functionalized, rich from the oceans. This is the carbon source mankind has not yet tapped. And if you can find a meaningful way of using the carbon, which is the highly functionalized, intermediates, metabolites from the ocean, of course, in an ethical manner, there is a huge potential which might actually address some of the carbon requirement deficiencies or the needs that are currently emerging. So I have kind of given a context. How much time do I have? 15 minutes or? Okay. So with the permission of Chali Janardhan sir and Srinivas sir, I will just, because it's a chemistry department, I'm tempted to talk about a bit of chemistry that we have also done. So yeah, it's okay. No, okay. So we have been working on many molecules, but then I decided to pick 3 molecules, which are all recently they became famous. This is called boceprevir. As you know, whenever we work on any API, we like to think about the patient, the disease, and how seriously the patient can be impacted, because it is an inspiration for us that we have to solve chemistry challenges because there is a patient who is waiting to be benefited, or there is a patient who is waiting to be benefited from an affordable therapeutic. So boceprevir, interestingly, was developed, one of the very early molecules developed for a disease called hepatitis C, which is quite problematic. It's also sometimes people with chronic kidney disease can get this, dialysis patients, leads to liver cirrhosis. It's the mortality rates can be pretty bad. Then there is one more molecule called upadacitinib, which has been discovered as a JAK kinase inhibitor. It's also used for rheumatoid arthritis. And there is a third one, which is the nirmatrelvir. But in all of these, what is common is we are talking about pyrrolidines, which are highly densely functionalized. Ones which are indicated in the yellow and the red here. So when we started with the boceprevir synthesis, we were interested in synthesizing this. Basically, it's a proline. We have a dimethyl cyclopropyl proline. We were interested in synthesizing it, looked at various approaches, and one of the thought that occurred to us was, why not use a toxic material or an insecticide ingredient and use it to something which would be a pharmaceutically active intermediate. So along these lines, we were a bit inspired, and then we narrowed down on what is known as a cypermenthric acid. This cypermenthric acid is also part of some of these mosquito repellents. It's quite toxic when we deal at high concentrations. So starting from a cypermenthric acid, we wanted to basically, there are 2 approaches. Either one can build a cyclopropyl ring, or one can take a pre-existing cyclopropyl ring and build the rest of the proline. So we decided to not go for a cyclopropionation. We thought we will build the downstream entire synthesis. So we took the the corresponding acid chloride of the cypermenthric acid. We made the amide bond and then cyclized it in the presence of sodium hydride, along with a concomitant process wherein we were able to get rid of one chlorine, because the whole idea about the synthesis is we didn't want to add any carbons. Just use the carbons which are already there in cypermenthric acid and get what we need. No addition, no deletion. That was the hypothesis, and I think we are quite happy to see that in a couple of transformations along with an oxidative conversion, we were able to get the corresponding CH2OS, which was poised to be the future carboxylic acid. So a set of routine transformations with lithium aluminum hydride, reducing it to the corresponding pyrrolidine, Swern oxidation, epimerization, because we needed the acid to be trans to the cyclopropyl ring, we were able to make it. But however, having said this, while this synthesis was a good template, it did not really, there were certain things which are not very practical to scale it up. So then we worked on a second generation route in terms of looking at the cypermenthric acid, both a classical chemical resolution as well as an enzymatic approach to the resolution. And then we started telescoping the steps. So I'm trying to basically use this scheme to introduce a word called telescoping. Telescoping is a process where we do 2-3 chemical transformations without isolating them. And there's a lot of cost, time, and many other advantages that come in as long as we can control the impurity profile. So we telescope the couple of steps, as you can see here. We have bunched them up in terms of doing a kind of a reduction with the borane and then also doing the oxidation to get the hydroxy. And this was taken directly without isolation to the corresponding carboxylic acid via what is known as an oxidative kind of a scenario, and we get the ester. So basically this is the entire thing. Then we also got the crystal structure and proven. So initially this is what happens in process chemistry. First, when we have a template, we start mapping what are the flaws and start updating the entire approach. But what is interesting is I thought this synthesis, unfortunately boceprevir did not do well. Gilead came up with one more molecule called sofosbuvir, and the market was dominated. But this synthesis that we published long ago in a tetrahedron and forgotten about it suddenly became famous when COVID hit. So this same ingredient, amino acid, pseudomimetic amino acid, was part of the nirmatrelvir drug which Pfizer developed recently for COVID. It's called as a part of the Paxlovid combination. So this is the nirmatrelvir synthesis, and herein we had the same intermediate, and our synthesis actually was used by many groups eventually to scale it up quite efficiently. But look at this molecule again. Again, this is a bit like boceprevir. It's a tetrapeptide with pseudo amino acids. And what is very interesting is you actually have a nitrile here, a nitrile intermediate, and that adds to the chemical complexity instead of an amide. So when we started working on a synthetic route, again, it was a race against time. You are given 15 days to come up with a synthesis. So when we developed the entire synthesis, we thought we will, like any peptide, do a building block approach. Take one building block 1, building block 2, put them together, and it all made sense. Using our boceprevir knowledge, we could do it. But ultimately, we hit a bottleneck at a place where we never kind of realized. So as you can see here, when we made this entire thing, we also synthesized this particular fragment. And as experience, we assumed that we could dehydrate it to the nitrile and then do the final coupling, and we would get the final product. And Pfizer was using a reagent called Burgers reagent, which has huge challenges in scale-up. But when we looked at this particular known synthesis and kept on working on it, what we realized was a simple chemistry became an insurmountable problem. So when we dehydrated it to the nitrile, every time we wanted to remove the bark, we used to get around 15 to 20% back amide. And despite all the careful control, trying to control the radical, adding some additives, nothing really helped. So chemistry was hitting a bottleneck, but we were waiting for the process to be transferred for manufacturing. So at that time, we used a different way of doing the same reaction. Instead of an RB flask, we decided to do the reaction in a tube. And as you can see here, what we did was essentially took this process with the nitrile with the amide impurity, and we used a reagent called T3P, wherein not only the amide bond formation happens, but also the residual 15-20% of the amide impurity gets dehydrated back to the nitrile, giving us a very clean product. So there are two steps which are done in one pot, and by doing this, and again when we did it in a flow-based approach, I'll come to what is flow chemistry very soon, we were able to accomplish the synthesis, and interestingly, even Pfizer had not reported this process, as can be shown here. So essentially what happens is, today maybe in the last 10 minutes, I will introduce you to the concept about how a chemist can do a reaction in a completely different manner. For example, I think those who have visited drills have probably seen some flow chemistry setups. But here is where instead of doing the reaction in an RB flask, we do the reaction in a tube. And there are certain advantages which I will come to. I will probably skip this example for want of time. Yes. So now coming back to the newer paradigms, because now there is a huge pressure for us to do chemistry more efficiently and sustainability. By the way, efficiency is kind of, in a way, you can assume that it is directly proportional or equivalent to sustainability. So there are some clear guidelines to use benign solvents, choosing atom economical synthesis, so on and so forth. But one of the important aspects is, all this is fine, but we need new tools of the trade in order to be able to achieve this. So one technology that has been very strongly standing out in the recent years is what is known as the flow chemistry, where we essentially produce a material or a chemical in a movement, not statically in a given reactor. And there have been several advantages of flow chemistry. For example, how many of you can you think that you can do a reaction where the boiling point is 80, but you can do it at 160 degrees? Unsafe, right? We don't want to do it. But imagine if you can do the reaction at 160, maybe it is going to show a very different chemical profile that we have not ever evaluated as a part of our own research. So along these lines, in the last few years, there have been a lot of publications. If you see up to 2006 to 19, there are a lot of very interesting exotic syntheses that are being reported. And we have also started looking into flow chemistry from the footprint perspective. Let me give you an example. If each of this reactor is expected to make 1 ton, which is equivalent to 1,000 kilos, and we need to produce at least 5 tons a month, then you need to have a lot of these huge reactors. Maybe I'll use the third person to use the word humongous reactors in order to do the transformation. But you can also do the transformation in a tube, as long as you're able to produce a chemical in a tube of a given length. And here time is equal to quantity. If you run it for a longer time at a smaller footprint, you're able to do that reaction. Now what is the advantage here is, when the reactor blasts, it can be fatal to the people, But here if a tube blasts, it is just a burst tube. It doesn't really matter. So using this very simple logic, petrochemical industry, fine chemical industry, they use lot of chemical synthesis under flow conditions, typically what we also call as, say, plug flow or any other conditions. So what is the advantage here? The advantage is you can go to certain very difficult, dangerous conditions can be done because the footprint is still in a smaller zone, so the risk can be minimized. You can go to certain reaction conditions, high temperatures, pressures, which we cannot conventionally handle in manufacturing. You can use certain reagents. For example, photochemistry. We have a course in photochemistry, right? I can tell you hardly photochemistry is used in manufacturing. The problem is as follows. Imagine a reactor which is half the size or a quarter the size of the room. To provide an illumination of the same intensity in a very equal manner is not possible. It is very complicated. And sometimes that can lead to a lot of challenges. Except for vitamin D3 synthesis, we don't have very clear examples of photochemistry being. I'm not saying that's the only example, there are others as well. But now if you have to do the same reaction in a tube, maybe of this dimension, it is possible for you to use light of a specific wavelength with the same intensity and make sure that it doesn't get heated up by putting a cooling utility and be able to do the same transformation. So 100 years or maybe now 120 years of photochemistry, which is actually a green way of doing things, we have not employed purely because it is not possible to take it into manufacturing. But in flow, you can use photochemistry, you can revisit the entire literature and use it meaningfully and come up with greener transformation. So as you know, the concept basically here, as I go along, I'm trying to kind of maybe emphasize here is, there is light, there is energy, there is sound, there is microwave. A lot of techniques have not been employed and it is possible to do it if you were to do it in a flow-based condition. So this is actually a molecule called MSM. Those who know DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, you can actually oxidize to the sulfone. Historically, people put it on the knee and other thing for relieving the knee pain. It's also part of the tablet, along with glucosamine for those who have joint pains. It is used in Korea as a cosmeceutical. We wanted to do a process where DMSO will get oxidized to the corresponding sulfone, which is called MSM, methyl sulfonyl methane. So here we were heating up hydrogen peroxide at 110 degrees. This came through some AIML program, so it told us. But then the practical problem is the decomposition temperature of hydrogen peroxide is not even around 70 or even not even that much. Now, once you go about that, we are going into a hazardous zone. It means we are waiting for an explosion. We are trying to simulate a rocket propulsion or an explosion rather than a chemical reaction. But the team here was able to do the reaction at 100 degree in a flow, because before anything decides to happen, the material comes out, the product forms. And this is actually an example of again, we are not trying to sell our chemistry here, but example of a green process. You take dimethyl sulfoxide, no solvent. Use hydrogen peroxide in water. Water, hydrogen peroxide is a natural ingredient, oxidized form of water, no issues. Heat it, get the sulfone, which is again a multi-tonnage product globally, and then it kind of cool it, it settles down like a nice white solid, filter it, no organic solvent for workup. So this is potentially fitting the realm of a green process. No extra additions, only water which is natural to earth, we are fine with it. And of course there is an energy, we are heating it at 110, but we are heating a small part. So we are crossing a dangerous zone, but we are still thankfully safe because we are limited. So what actually kind of inspires us is, as a chemist, we know our successes, we also know where we are going wrong, right? If there is a confession box for a chemist, I think there will be a big beeline that all of us have to make. But what is important is, if we can use technology, flow is one technology, there are other technology perhaps. Technology with your chemistry, you can probably solve problems for which there are no obvious solutions. I think this is just an example along those lines. We were able to scale it up again close to 1 kilo in a different reactor. Again, it's a different version of a flow reactor. This is again an acrylamide cationic monomer, which is needed for polymer industry, where we were able to do it in flow, again going at higher temperatures. This is an interesting case of green bromination. Bromine is very dangerous to use. Anybody who has experience with bromine, it can actually leave a hole in the hand should it fall on our hand. But HBr is relatively safer. So we are trying to look at processes where HBr can lead to an in situ bromine, and how do you produce it? And then we use it for a molecule which is a high volume intermediate of a drug. Similarly, this is one more insecticide which can be done in flow. But essentially what I'm trying to say here is, one thing that is very exciting to us is we can do reactions at temperatures where we have never imagined we can do the chemistry. This is almost like doing like space chemistry, the chemistry that might happen outside the planet, somewhere next to Jupiter, right? So thanks to flow, high temperature, high T, high P. High P stands for the pressure. Lot of reactions that were conventionally not happening, they require a pressurized autoclaves or bombs, could be easily done in flow. And here actually I'm giving an example of a material which goes into an injection that is given to the patients to the joints. It's a bactericidal agent for those who are given steroidal injections to address acute knee pains. This is one of the things, maybe the cost could be like a kilo, could be technically a crore, at least a non-commercial pricing. But it could be eventually done in a small steel tube, as long as you are just pumping and you are heating it. So the idea here is the chemistry that you do, a lot of chemistries which cannot be taken into manufacturing but are green in nature, it is always possible to address it as long as you bring in technology. So the idea is like this. When you develop a process, you have the biosciences department upstairs. So they may have a different cell line or a E. coli or a Bacillus subtilis, which can do a transformation where we have to use 3 chemical steps. Talking to them and incorporating their technology in your process can make it green. Sometimes you can use a chemical engineering solution to make the process green. As I just mentioned, there are 3 sources which we chemists totally shy of. Light. My next talk, the brother will talk about electrochemistry, hydrogen, but we don't use electrochemistry much. And we don't use other input. For example, we don't do biocatalysis in flow, biocatalysis so often than what we need to do. However, flow chemistry is, just taking it as a specific example, you are able to integrate these approaches and you are able to achieve transformations and results which are otherwise not possible. Now coming back, I think I'm coming to the last slide. I've always had a problem with this slide. And I have made a mistake during a couple of talks myself. I call it Unsustainable Developmental Goals, SDGs, because the way it is written. But it stands for UN, United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. But the real sorry state of affairs, along with some very sensitive pointers that we have seen from US, globe is becoming unsustainable. We have already crossed 1.C. It's going towards 2. And the glaciers are melting, climatic resilience related aspects are coming up. So if you look at chemistry, we are the most useful entities that are available on the planet for the next 2 to 3 decades. Because if zero hunger has to be achieved, chemistry can be a solution. Because even the synthesis of the fertilizers, synthesis of the pesticides, all this would require strong chemistry and done in a sustainable manner without adding up more to the problem. Good health and well-being, chemistry focused. Cleaner water sanitation, we already heard about these membranes today, chemistry focused. Affordable and clean energy, we have had Brother Gopichandran's lecture also focusing on the energy aspects. But purely from industry, innovation and infrastructure, I think we chemists have a very, very powerful role. Recently, Royal Society has launched a journal of sustainability on sustainable chemistry, which essentially focuses on some of, in fact, when we send a publication, the reviewers expect to say that my article is trying to exemplify this UNSDC goal. Because the whole thing is like a test. If I cannot align to a UNSDG goal, it will come back before the email reaches them. The response will be, thank you, you can submit to a different journal. So this sensitivity increasing, but my worry here is the outside world is doing sustainability as a lip service. Corporates may use sustainability sometimes more to attract the shareholder interest. So this has to be much more introspective about how we approach. We need to be very critical about what we do, understand the gaps in what we do, and only then maybe we are able to find solutions. And when we don't know solutions, there are people to help. We can ask for other experts to chip in. I think there is a lot that we need to do. And I kind of the suggestion that we should keep looking at this slide every second day at least, because there will be just like a periodic table. there is something that we need to figure out and how to go about it. I'll just maybe end with one small example. There is a very senior person from Syngenta, and they use these pesticides to increase the agricultural output and reduce the waste. Now, every chemical that is used, how this molecule can be biocatalyzed by the soil fungi, soil bacteria, whatever, to form certain metabolites, which may not have a deleterious impact, and which those metabolites should not have a toxicology profile, or they should not be toxic for the next 5 years. They should not create any new problem. So now every company, it has become mandatory for the agrochemical companies to look into the current molecules which are already commercial, to show that the metabolites that are being produced can be safely characterized as non-toxic, right? They have to do a complete profiling. And some of these bacteria and fungi are smarter than the typical organic chemists. They can do transformations which is difficult for me to do. And we are expected to make gram quantities and do this, right? So the entire paradigms are changing. There's a lot of information overload that is going to happen in the next 5 years, after which things should settle down, and some of the more pragmatic approaches to going into sustainable chemistry would be there. I cannot think of a better opportunity than, as the Honorable Vice Chancellor today was mentioning, about starting this proposed Center of Sustainability. I think here sustainability is an overarching theme where everybody can contribute. All of us have a role to play, and we can positively contribute. I think with that, it is certainly definitely a goal for all of us as chemists to be a bit more practical, more benign, and less toxic to Mother Earth. So with that, I should thank today, if I'm standing here and talking, and Swami gave 2 times gold medal for BSc Honours and for MSc. I always used to wonder that what did I do to deserve 2 gold medals? Maybe I've done some good things in the past life or whatever, right? But this is my problem, that when something good happens, I always think, okay, it has happened, but do I really deserve it? Then I started thinking in a different strategy. Maybe sometimes Swami does not because of what we must have done in the past, but there's a sense of responsibility to stick to the right path going forward. So with that, it has been an effort in an outside world which is very complicated, not easy to deal with. You have to deal with businesses, you have to be productive, you are dealing with challenges, you are dealing with friendly enemies. But at the end of the day, if you see Swami in everybody, I think Swami will take care of that. So today, if I'm there, again, thank you, sir, Sundareshan sir, Cheli Janardhan sir, I think I don't, Nageshwara sir, Jagdishwar Rao sir, and all the teachers who have been very patient with us. I think our batch, if I understand, was one of the bigger batches, and also we were quite notorious for doing many activities. So they could not only teach us chemistry, but I think 60% of the time to discipline us would have been the case. If not for them, I would not be standing here. So they are the real gurus. And if you do any small success in life, it all belongs to them. Our role is more like an instrument. Clinically go about the task that we are given to. With that, thank you so much. I know it is afternoon, and also after Brother Gopi Chandran, who is one of the most eloquent speakers. Very difficult to speak. It's a risk also. But it's a risk that I was ready to take for sustainability purpose. So with that, thank you so much. And again, Sai Ram.
Anyone
Oh, did you find it?
Actually, it was there. You don't have to accept my apology.
Okay. No,
But please pass me.
no, not a problem. I'm happy that during the time frame the phone could be located. Yes.
I missed part.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Very nice to question yours. Very interesting. And so I have a couple of things. So this you're saying that flow chemistry is going to be the future of chemistry?
No, flow chemistry will not be the future of chemistry. Flow chemistry will offer us one more approach to be able to do chemistry. For example, it would always be
High
a...
temperature, high pressure.
So let us look at it like this. If you have 10 chemical transformations in a sequence which is going into manufacturing, some of these processes can be better be done in flow. Some of the things may not require reinvestment or changing the batch reactor or the conventional way of production. So where we need to probably shift over to the flow as soon as possible is if there is even the slightest safety that is directly proportional to the scale of the reaction. That's one of the things. Second thing is timestamp. I gave this example in University of Hyderabad. When we go to take a COVID vaccine, we should take the vaccine and just come out. But if we take the vaccine, go for a cup of tea here and there, it's quite likely that we will get the virus. And then we cannot say that the vaccine did not work. Same thing in flow chemistry. As soon as A becomes B, before it decides to become B prime or C prime, if you bring it out of the tube and quench it, you're able to control the impurity profile. So coming back, if there is a timestamp on the impurity profile, or if a product can itself form impurities, flow can automatically give you an answer. Third example, as we just kind of discussed, is you can go to some very different conditions like high temperature, pressure. Think of a butyllithium reaction at -78, doing it at 0 degrees for a tonnage-based product. We can just get the reaction right. Because one of the things that we have realized is when we do a reaction, we don't realize how much time is required. The reaction is defined as the time to go to tea, lunch, dinner. If you are feeling lazy, come back the next day. So we do not really understand what is happening. Maybe we are giving the chemical too much time. Overnight reaction. Overnight reaction means I'm feeling sleepy for the day, come back tomorrow, right? But with flow, what happens is we realize a half-an-hour reaction can actually go in 5 seconds. The residence time can be 20 seconds. So we started understanding the properties of the reaction to a greater level of accuracy. Fifth and most important point is, if somebody were to ask us, how are you going to be more chemistry sustainable? The three immediate answers is I will do photochemistry because light is fine, it's not toxic, there is no waste. Second is I can use electrochemistry because current can be produced. Can I use electron as a reagent instead of an oxidizing agent or a reducing? Use an electron, right? That's the second part. The third part is whether we go to some high temperature, including microwave based. All these things are better controlled when you do it in a flow. You can also induce different heats of mixing by choosing the different kinds of reactors, the reactor design. We can simulate these parameters. You can also have what is known as a digital twin built into a flow process. Just like nowadays people are going for the bioreactors, the digital twins. So it's possible to do it. Second thing is there are a lot of data that will get accumulated. Instruments are going to pump the reagent, not as our hands, so there will be more uniformity. So I strongly believe smaller footprint, and due to the reasons that I mentioned, flow should be a conscious adoption by industries in the next couple of years, but they don't have to replace every process. If what I mentioned does not adhere to, you can go with the convention. So the concept which we are trying to popularize is called hybrid process. Use batch, use flow, use judiciously a bit of both, and impact of whatever we are looking for should be met. But I can hear. I can hear.
No, listening to you with so many advantages of flow chemistry, why it should not be a norm? If you exclude the investment part or changing from batch process to flow process, maybe the future could be very bright for it.
I think it is happening. The investments, especially in the pharmaceutical, there are two things. One is investment, and you have to go for a regulatory resubmission once more. But if you look into the oil industry, the petroleum refinery is completely in flow. 365 days, 24/7, it does not stop. It's one of the finest examples. Fine chemical industry uses flow. In pharma, what happens is the word batch has a reason. Batch means it's defined to the size of the output that I'm trying to produce. So sometimes what happens is it's like a bit like a CDMO model, where you need, ideally, the pharmaceutical companies are interested to develop a process for really high volume, high tonnage products.
Just a related question.
Yes.
So should, see, all this flow process, flow chemistry, or really chemical engineering students are taught. Okay, but for chemistry, maybe people are taught as an elective or something like that, or one paper, flow chemistry. So should chemistry be taught in that direction, or in that way?
So there are two very big people who asked two different questions. You are the second big person. The first big person was Professor Stephen Lay from Cambridge. I happened to meet him and he asked me, should Python and other things be part of the PhD program? it was a difficult question because I don't think I'll pick up those things now. So, but the way he asked, the answer was from me was it should be a yes. Right. So, University of Hyderabad has introduced on this R and other machine learning based as part of masters. Now, coming back to your thing, maybe I will suggest chemical engineering in a kind of a condensed or a distilled version should be introduced in a master's course, in which flow chemistry can be a subset of the chemical engineering, because it is becoming more and more engineering centric, and sometimes it becomes difficult for us to understand the jargon and the context, the safety, the thermodynamics, the including fluid dynamics is something that we don't understand. Now, if that can be introduced as an ancillary course, and flow can be integrated in that, I think that will do more justice, because flow is left to imagination. Different people can do it differently. So this is my thought process. It will certainly help both at PhD and master's level.
And again, the sustainability and things like that. Should see the conventional definitions of physics, chemistry, or divisions we have, physics, chemistry, maths, or even in chemistry, organic, inorganic, physical. So will that sort of approach help in the future, or should you have integrated interdisciplinary type of approach, where like if students study maths, physics, chemistry, or in chemistry also they study organic, inorganic, physical, and material science?
See, there are two ways of looking at it. Super specialization into a given topic will not lead to, I think here we have MSc general chemistry, means we don't call it general chemistry. When you go to some universities, they say MSc biochemistry or MSc enzyme chemistry. They make it so super specialized that the person who comes out of the MSc is so focused that they cannot adjust to any other area. So I still feel the way we have deep, really high quality teaching in every topic will enable somebody to adapt quite well. I think that is the first thing. Now, coming back, these courses are expected to sensitize the student as to what they are going to face going forward, and some electives can be chosen so that they can attend a course in biosciences, vice versa, if it is possible. I think that is what I see. Now, for example, it would probably be a mistake to start an MSc in sustainable chemistry, because it may be popular today, but you need a good chemistry to make things sustainable. I think that's fundamentally where we are. So we'll have to kind of blend in. But chemical engineering, the more often I see, I think, especially the courses in the other countries, they have a stronger instrumentation, chemical engineering play, which would help. Here, thankfully, our institute is very powerful, a lot of exposure to equipment, but others do not. But it can help to see if there are some gaps are there. And
reaction which occurs at 80 degrees centigrade to carrying out at higher temperature.
Yes.
So don't you think that rheoselectivity, stereoselectivity can be a problem?
Excellent question.
And the flow chemistry maybe.
No, I totally agree. If you are doing a reaction at 40 degrees, and if you want to do the reaction at 80 degrees, the first question we need to ask is, are the chemicals thermally stable? Or will it become a nice tar before it comes out? Right? Because, so you are trying to enhance the kinetics, but it comes at the cost of thermal stability of the materials. So we'll have to understand definitely this thermal stability profile, or at least do a couple of runs to test out this hypothesis. Now coming back to the regioselectivity and others, yes, temperature can have a very important role, but imagine you are able to figure out a time and a regioselectivity with temperature and create a kind of a grid between the three parameters. It is possible to do it. It is very simplistic, and many people might think that I can do any reaction and get away with it, which is absolutely not the case. We have to understand the chemistry first, and then why we are applying the different way of doing the things. See, look at our Ganges, Mother Ganga. She is clean as long as she is flowing. If stagnates, dirty. Flow is a bit like that, right? Purity and pristinity can be maintained as long as you are able to do in flow. Stagnate, some problems can come. I think there is a lot of different chemists and different people can have their own intrinsic understanding. I think So the whole idea is if we start getting exposed at a younger age, maybe tomorrow's really breakthrough innovations can be seen. Coming back, flow electrochemistry is a very popular area. We have just started something along those lines for some products. Same thing. You cannot have a room full of batteries, but you can have a small battery as long as the material comes and goes out. So it's a bit like that.
I think I'll stop here. We'll continue.
Sure,
We'll
okay.
continue offline.
Okay.
It is said nature is the best teacher. Nature effortlessly synthesizes, I should put, manufactures thousands of compounds at room temperature. So is there a concerted effort to study the biomimetic pathway to synthesize many complex molecules?
Sir, biomimetic approaches have been very popular. If you look into mimicking a chlorophyll with a transition metal complex and trying to even get the level of energy efficiency has not really happened. I think we are trying to look at a lot of this and simulate the systems, looking at different iridium-based catalysis systems and other things. The answer is we are not there yet. But that is clearly the way forward. So I think you have raised a very important topic and I never mentioned it. The latest concept, in fact, we are hoping that we do something at the institute drills or any other places. Recently, DBT has started a biomanufacturing strategy. I'm on one of the subsectoral committees for APS. But the whole concept is like this, sir. There is a saying that cure is not in a pill but in a cell when we talk about CAR-T or stem cell therapies. But similarly, we are trying to use a cell to do a chemical synthesis. And this is nothing but synthetic biology, where we manipulate the genes, we insert multiple cascade gene sequences in a given cell so that we can take a metabolite, you put a steroid, it undergoes multiple transformations and then produces what we really need. For example, companies are using this for the synthesis of glycerol, Solvay works on it. People are using it for isoprene on the simpler side of things. People are using for some very complex steroidal molecules, where by design that E. coli or Bacillus subtilis or yeast is not designed to do. They kind of insert the gene sequences so that a multi-cascade transformation can happen and then also increase the propensity. And that's where CRISPR editing is becoming very popular, because you can also remove domains where the metabolite can be toxic to the entire material. So there are a lot of very deep molecular biology techniques, but at the end of the day, it is a cell which is essentially doing. Similarly, even on the effluent treatment, heavy metal toxicity, or for that matter, this plastic-based biodegradation, people are trying to engineer some artificial cells which can, in principle, do the job. So the idea here is 10 years from today, if most of these transformations can happen through cells and a classical fermentation-based approach, it might do. But coming back, sir, to your very specific thing, even as I just said, photosynthesis, we have not been able to simulate this. And how nature does this at room temperature is a very complex question. It's not even room temperature. The seasons keep varying, but the nature keeps doing whatever it feels like. So there is a climatic temperature resilience built in, integrated into the design that God has done. So we are not there yet, is what I'm thinking, but there may be some groups which are using this.
Ram sir, I have a small question. It's a very informative talk. Thank you. I was wondering, how has click chemistry, after its advent, how has that helped to move towards sustainability? And is there enough amount of work being done to explore click chemistry more? And are you involved in any such projects, or is your group involved in any such projects? And how do you see click chemistry going forward?
Okay, so I see two parts to your question. One is this Caroline Bertozzi and others recently got, I think, Barry Trost, not Barry Trost. What is it? He got the Nobel for the second time.
Sharpless.
Barry Sharpless. So he got the second Nobel Prize.
Yes,
so click chemistry is a very atom economical reaction, because you take an acetylene, you take an azide, and then you get the nice thing. The application of click chemistry certainly some extent is in the polymer industry or anchored immobilization, but some of the examples are also into biology. For example, if you look into antibody, you look at toxic drugs, right? But there is something called antibody drug conjugates, wherein the toxic cytotoxic drug is put on the antibody like a payload, and very specifically it goes to the cancer cells, and you're able to kill the cancer cells without any lack of site selectivity. Now, click chemistry is one of the approaches which people are introducing. Even into that, it is used a lot in biology in very selective labeling of cellular organelles to do imaging, to understand the protein dynamics. Actually, I think TFR Bombay does a lot of this fluorescent PET cell imaging, and these reagents are contained in click chemistry. So there is a lot of progress. There are a couple of drugs which I can probably share with you later on, which also have an azide. Now, coming back to the flow chemistry for click chemistry, it might be a good idea in the sense that you're not supposed to handle an azide at high concentrations or at high volumes because of free nitrogens. It is potentially explosive because of the high energy that is present. So we often look at transformations where we make the azide in flow, not isolate it, and then send it to the next kind of a coupling. So that's the thing. So it's certainly, there are a lot of very useful, how to say, even end user industry impact from these reactions.
Just speaking from a sustainability point of view, since one of the aims of click chemistry is to...
What is the most sustainable reaction, tell me?
Photosynthesis, like you told.
Urea synthesis. That is completely atom economic. Can any of our synthesis meet that requirement? We have to see. Right? If that is A grade or A plus or O grade. So it's a comparative kind of a scenario. So we have to move towards it. It's not possible always, but make an effort.
And you say that there is work being done in that area also.
Yeah, we are also putting our efforts. See, many times when you do the processes for certain chemicals, there are moments where an API which is manufactured for last 40 years comes back to our table with a proposal that can you do something about it? Can you make it better and at the same time make it cheaper? Because China is selling it cheaper than us. Because I was part of the PLA scheme, we were drafting the entire chemistry part, selecting those 40 plus molecules and all these things. So during these times, we always look at newer ways of, chemistry keeps evolving. Every decade we have better reactions. So can we use new chemistry, or can we use some new manufacturing approach? So that broadly that is. But main thing is, as you have asked, asking the question is the first starting point to sustainability. If you think I have done everything perfectly, then nothing sustainable. But if you pick the flaws and do a kind of an introspection mapping, you can keep improving not the entire process, but the gaps. Okay, I think I should leave now. Okay, Sairam, and thank you, sir, again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srinivas, for exemplifying how out-of-box perspective can be helpful in formulating something like flow chemistry. So now we move to the final talk of this session. So now I request Dr. Nagasai Visweshwar to come over to the stage and introduce the speaker. Dr. Nagasai Visweshwar is currently assistant professor in the Prashant Nilayam campus in the Department of Chemistry.
Sairam, I have pleasant duty to introduce the third speaker of this session, Dr. Raman Vedarajan. Dr. Raman Vedarajan is an alumnus of our university, and he has finished his master's in the year 2000. Later, he went on to pursue his doctoral degree from the Anna University and he got his degree in the year 2006. During his PhD, he was nominated as an exchange research scholar by the Ministry of Human Resource and Development to carry out his research at Osaka University as a Japanese government researcher in the year 2004. After completion of his PhD, he continued to do his postdoctoral fellowship at National Institute of Material Sciences, Tsukuba, Japan, and Nagoya University. Later, in 2012, he worked as an assistant professor at Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology in the School of Material Sciences. His area of research is mainly on applied electrochemistry. From 2017, Dr. Vedarajan has joined as scientist at the Center for Fuel Cell Technology in the International Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials at Chennai, India. He is also an adjunct faculty at the Department of Chemistry, IIT Madras. Currently, his research areas are on a variety of new energy materials, development of new electrocatalysts for fuel cells, polymer electrolytes for lithium-ion batteries, recycling of precious components from PEM fuel cells. He has contributed more than 70 publications and has about 9 patents, Japanese, US, and Europe patents, and also has a technology transfer during his research career. Apart from his illustrious academic career and industrial career, Brother Raman has also been a very important instrumental person for propagation of Vedam in Japan. So with this brief introduction, I welcome Dr. Raman Vedarajan to deliver his talk.
Sairam, thank you very much, Brother Vishweshwar. My humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. And before I start my presentation, I would like to start with Brother Srinivas' last slide. My gratitude to all the professors here, Sundareshan sir, Chirijanan sir, and ma'am, and Nagesh Rao sir, and Jagdish Rao sir. Thank you so much. And the sustenance part starts here. The gateway is here. The gateway to my sustenance is from this very university. So talking about a gateway to sustainable solution through green hydrogen is, I think, by destiny I am doing this here now. Okay. I wanted to keep my presentation light and energetic. So I chose the word hydrogen because nothing can be lighter than that. So, and it has maximum energy in it. So I'll try to keep my presentation lighter. Okay. Huh? But energy-wise, this is light and energetic. So my today's presentation will have three portions. One is uses of hydrogen and production of hydrogen and storage and transportation. The part production has more importance in the relevance of green hydrogen. So I'll talk more on green hydrogen and its production. So we have been all talking about net zero. So why this point of net zero comes is that in the earlier days, like during the imperial revolution or the industrial revolution, we all were talking about carbon as the main source for hydrocarbon as a fuel. And then during the 90s, we were talking about lithium. So if you see, we moved away from the 6 atomic number to 3 atomic number. And suddenly people started thinking that hydrogen is the best solution for a sustainable future. So we are moving towards 1. And 1 is closer to 0. So maybe this is a way towards net zero. Might be very illogical, but that is the way I think. Okay. So fuel cells are more energy efficient. So we know that fuel cell is something that runs on hydrogen. But why should we go to the fuel cell is one, not because of there is a no carbon dioxide and only water is a main product, but also efficiency wise fuel cells are more better than normal gasoline run vehicles. Okay. So that is the reason why we are trying to go towards hydrogen. Okay. So it is 60 or 58% in real sense hydrogen fuel cells can work, whereas the combustion is only somewhere around 30-35%. And talking about the high energy by mass, hydrogen has got high gravimetric energy. whereas it has got very low volumetric energy. What that is to say that we will not be able to confine much of hydrogen in a small space. We need lot of space for confining hydrogen. It's something like a cotton and iron. So cotton requires more space to occupy the same 1 kg of cotton, whereas iron requires only a small place, right? Similar to that, hydrogen requires a large space. 500 grams of hydrogen can be stored in a very big cylinder. Only 500 grams can be stored. Whereas in case of other gases, it can be lot can be stored. So we have to work on the compressibility of the hydrogen. That is the reason why we have very low volumetric, energy density. And this is one of the reasons why we are not able to load electric vehicle or say a fuel cell vehicle so easily with cylinders. That is one main reason for this. Okay. And coming to the other uses, or why should we look at green hydrogen is one thing which I'll be addressing now. So hydrogen can come from any source. It can be natural gas, it can be from renewable resources, or it can be nuclear, or it can be from coal itself. And we can make it into clean or green hydrogen, and then we can use it in different processes again. Like it can be in fuel cells, engines, IC engines with injected hydrogen can be used. Also it can be energy storage material, and then petroleum industry can use it. Methanol production can be done using it. Electronics, ammonia production, metal production and fabrication, food processing, cosmetics, and even pharmaceuticals can use this hydrogen. So that is one reason why we have to go for hydrogen, green hydrogen in specific. Okay, so we all know about the Mirai, Toyota's launch of full fuel cell vehicle. There is a lot of vehicles like a hybrid vehicle which runs on some amount of hydrogen and some amount of battery. This Mirai is a full fuel cell vehicle which runs only on hydrogen. Okay, but in the real sense, it also uses some kind of supercapacitors, but as such, it runs on full fuel cell. So this has a fuel cell of as small as this. It can be put into the bonnet of your car. So this is as small as your bonnet itself. But if you see the cylinder part of it, it's quite huge, and it occupies the whole portion behind your passenger seat. So now coming to this part, it can be sustainable only if you do some kind of material modification. So there is huge scope in storing the fuel cells hydrogen, the hydrogen for fuel cell. The fuel cell itself needs lot of components, and then the making of the hydrogen itself to make it as green also requires lot of material development. Here is an analogy. So all the electric vehicle that runs here on the road requires some kind of charging later in the night. But the electricity that is used for charging this itself comes from coal, because India is a predominantly coal-based electricity generator. So for example, if you are running your electric vehicle for a week, you will be spending as much carbon dioxide as a normal gasoline run vehicle will do. So if you see this analogy, we are not going to do anything great by running an electric vehicle, but only going to pacify your own ego, right? So to go from there, we have to run the electricity green. You can understand the problem here. We are only indirectly spending the carbon dioxide at a later point of time rather than now. In case of a normal petrol-based vehicle, we are sending out the exhaust of carbon dioxide immediately, whereas in case of electric vehicle, we are only postponing it till we charge our vehicle. So in the same way, if you are going to think about a full fuel cell vehicle, we have to make the hydrogen also from a greener source. It should not be that we use electricity and make the water split and then take the hydrogen and then use it here. So green hydrogen means we have to make the hydrogen from a source where there is no carbon dioxide emission. As far as the rule is concerned, I think they'll agree with me that 2 kg of carbon dioxide is a maximum limit that can be exhausted when it comes to green hydrogen. It's got a clean hydrogen. The topic of the giving colors to the hydrogen has been stopped lately. So it is more of clean hydrogen, and a clean hydrogen is claimed when we spend only 2 kg of carbon dioxide outside or exhausted during the process of making the electricity. Okay. So as we talk about net zero, hydrogen has a generation, a storage, utilization, and also end of the life. The components are used during this process has to be recycled. So everything put together, we have to make it clean. So this might be our goal, and there's huge scope of materials development in each one of this arm of the hydrogen economy. This is called the hydrogen economy. Generation, storage, and utilization is called the hydrogen economy. And talking about the TRL levels, so before I go to the next step, I would like to show here what TRL levels are. Most of the speakers here already touched about it in various ways, but to the students here, just please note that there is something called TRL levels. TRL levels are nothing but technology readiness levels. So a technology, it comes out as a commercial product after going through certain steps. It doesn't come out right away as a product, like in case of Srinivas' brother, the molecule does not come out as a drug the very next day. It goes through various steps as he showed. In this case, also there are there's a lot of steps where we have to follow, and our first step starts in the conceptualization. The second step goes to making some kind of data on that, and then we have to make the assembly, fabrication and assembly of the device that we have to study, and then prototyping, which is very difficult, like it's almost like a very big leap, and then distribution and logistics. Finally, the service and repair part also should be included in this all step, and then it becomes a product in the industry. So this is given some numbers. So TRL 0 is the where we start with the conceptualization, and we go all the way till TRL level 9. Maybe Venkatachalam sir is here, TRL level 9. He can make everything in huge quantity, starting from as brother told, it goes from 1 cup to 1 big vessel. So that is TRL level 9, where there is no issue of reproducibility. Reproducibility is TRL level 9. And here, one more thing which has to be added is the skill set. So anybody and everybody should be able to use it. There should not be a user-defined or a skill-defined set value here, constraint here. It should be, you should be able to give your device to anybody, and he should be able to operate it like a mobile phone. So that is the benchmark for TRL level 9. Okay. So when you start developing your process, start and have a roadmap for at least TRL level, say 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 is also okay. So why this hydrogen economy is still not coming out as a very big commercial in the commercial arena is because each of the arms has got its own problem. Every arm, I told about the production, the storage, and the utilization. Each of the arm is working in these levels, TRL level 7, 8, and 9. Like there are, as I show you, there are lots of types of devices in this, and each of this type comes under this classification, and that is the reason why we are not able to come to the commercial market still. And everything is facing some or the other issues. Okay, coming to the usage of green hydrogen, like if everybody agrees, then the fertilizer, like we are, India as such is using almost 6 million tons per annum of hydrogen, and we are self-sufficient for that. We are not borrowing it from anybody, we are self-sufficient for that. And how it is used in fertilizers industry, refining, and steel industry, and also in methanol production. So only 1% is methanol production. And this fertilizer industry is greatly benefited by this hydrogen. So the Haber-Bosch process is used, as ammonia is used to manufacture fertilizer. Ammonia is used for making the fertilizer, and ammonia production is done by this hydrogen. If we can convert this hydrogen to green hydrogen, that is, if we don't emit any carbon dioxide to produce this hydrogen, then we almost save 48% for green fertilizers. Then refining. So hydrogen is used to process crude oil. Here also we have almost 46%. These two major industries, if we can give green hydrogen, then we are almost solving the problem with respect to Indian scenario. And also there are steel industries, methanol, and recently the cement industry is also coming into the picture of using carbon, CO2 sequestration and things. Okay. So this is as of 2020. And then we have aim of the National Hydrogen Mission, which is to through National Hydrogen Mission, government aims to replace the domestic hydrogen consumption with green. This is the main mission of the hydrogen mission, and we are actively working on this to make, make awareness amongst all the academia and industry to use hydrogen, green hydrogen, and instead of the normal hydrogen. Okay, these are some examples where we have already seen the where this is used, where the green hydrogen can be used. And coming to the production of hydrogen, there are three various types of production. One is reformation, next is byproduct of hydrogen, and then electrolysis. So these three are the major producer of hydrogen, and it comes to 10 metric tons in US. This is not India, this is 10 metric tons in US. India is still to be accounted, and then these are mainly used in the same refining of natural gas and other things. And here in reformed gas, we have carbon dioxide coming out. So this is out right away. It is not a green method of producing hydrogen, but this CO2 can go for sequestration. It can be captured. It can be kept for further use. It can be converted to ethanol or methanol, and that can become a fuel again. So this is called a blue hydrogen. And then we have byproduct hydrogen. And here, so depending upon the output, for example, it can be from a chloroalkali company where during the process of producing chlorine or NaOCl or making caustic soda, you get hydrogen as a byproduct, and that can be used also. It's a high pure hydrogen. And then finally is the electrolysis of hydrogen. Electrolysis to make hydrogen from water. Okay. So here, this is the main area where we will be focusing today, because electrolysis requires electricity to split water, and this electricity can be produced from renewable energy. It can be taken from solar or wind. Okay, so this is where we'll be focusing today. Okay, not all hydrogen is created equally. That is, as I told you earlier, the hydrogen has got, earlier it was having color. So green hydrogen was supposed to be the one which had no carbon dioxide emission. And then there is blue hydrogen where the carbon dioxide was sequestered. Carbon dioxide was captured and used for later purposes. And then the gray hydrogen coming from coal. So where carbon dioxide was emitted without any treatment. So these are the three types of hydrogen. And also depending upon the other sources of electricity. For example, nuclear energy can also be used where there is no carbon dioxide emission, but it is called as a pink hydrogen or turquoise hydrogen. These kind of various colored shades are also coming out these days. So depending upon all this, now the DOE has put a target that there should be only 2 kgs of carbon dioxide that can be emitted during the process of making hydrogen, and that is called a clean hydrogen. Okay. So hydrogen production from renewable sources is one of the most apt scenario for making green hydrogen. So here heat can be taken into mechanical energy, or it can be used in thermolysis, and using thermolysis we can make hydrogen. And then next is make electricity directly from solar or wind, and then use it for electrolysis using electrolyzer. This is also gives the green hydrogen. And finally, we can use renewable energy and convert biomass into some suitable form, and then make hydrogen using photolysis is also one more way where we can do. So this is a comprehensive outlook of how all we can arrive at hydrogen. One more interesting aspect of hydrogen is there might be a problem with sun. One day sun might come and one day it will be cloudy. So that day we might not have a good solar electricity power. And one day there might be wind, and wind might stop on a seasonal occasion, and again we'll be going out of energy on that day. But if we can capture all this into hydrogen, we can always use this hydrogen back as electricity or any other reaction, as I showed you earlier. So keeping the hydrogen in stored form is easier than to store electricity in various batteries or energy storage devices. So that is one reason why we are looking at renewable energy. And also transportation of this hydrogen in pipes or any other cylinders is much more easier than taking away the electricity. Though taking electricity through pipe, power grids or power lines is also known, but converting the DC output to AC or back and forth creates a lot of problem, and that is the reason why keeping something in mass form is easier to handle. So first case is the thermolysis. In this case, what happens is anyway, we have to make hydrogen from water. That is a primary goal. We have H2O. This H2O has to be split into hydrogen and oxygen. The energy used for this is that it is going to remain same irrespective of whether you are going to electricity or you are going to use it as heat. So in this case, we are using it as a thermal method where we are taking up the water's temperature to more than 2000 degrees Celsius so that it splits into hydrogen and oxygen. But taking to 2000 is almost like practically impossible when it comes to generation of huge scale. So there are some techniques like here where they mix iodine and sulfur into the stream, and then this is something like the flow chemistry where one of the compartment is maintained at 400 degrees Celsius, the other compartment is maintained 900 degrees Celsius, and it flows into a reactor, and one side we get the hydrogen and other side we get the oxygen. Again, the sulfur, SO2 along with water comes back to the mainstream. So this is a circulatory process where we get hydrogen and oxygen at two different temperatures, and this is called high temperature gas cooled reactor. This HTGR is a high temperature gas cooled reactor which is used for this kind of thermolysis. And if you see, there are various countries which have been using this kind of a method, and USA has been the pioneer in this, and lately India has joined this race, and India is also producing this kind of hydrogen since 2013. BARC has been the forerunner in India, and they have been making various this kind of cycles, different kinds of cycles. And Sikri Karaikudi has come up with a new cycle called the CuCl cycle, that is copper chloride cycle, and this produces around 25 liters per hour, and this is also demonstrated. So the use of this kind of chemistry to make hydrogen is also one of the important topics. Then this one you know very well, this is the photolysis where the water is directly split into hydrogen and oxygen using the energy from light. So the light has the energy, but what happens is luckily for H2O, it doesn't, it doesn't absorb the energy directly. Else we would have been not having water at all. Everything would have got split into hydrogen and oxygen. We would not be having any thing to drink. So and in this case, we have to absorb or trap the the electrons through some kind of a semiconductor, and there we have lots of semiconductor materials that I think you will be knowing. Like TiO2 is one among them, where TiO2 can take the UV part of it, and it can go to the 3.2 electron volts band gap is very well suitable for splitting water. So the main important material aspect that has to be discussed here is that the stability of the material, and the visible portion of the light is not trapped in case of TiO2. So we have to make some modification to make the visible light also be useful for splitting above this water. So this is also a upcoming or it's widely studied research topic. PEC or photoelectrochemical water splitting or normal photocatalytic splitting is widely appreciated these days, and this comes under green hydrogen production. Then coming further into the materials, we need a band gap energy of 2 electron volt. At the same time, it should not be decomposing other contaminants, and the conduction valence band edges to straddle water redox potentials, so that the water, hydrogen and oxygen comes separately, which is very difficult in case of the PECs, because hydrogen and oxygen comes very close and we are not able to separate the gases. And we can do strategies being adapted is doping of various semiconductor materials so that we can adjust the bands and the band gap. Layered structures, desensitization are all the topics which is of wide interest now. And also nanocomposite with Fe2O3 graphene or bio-inspired catalyst, cobalt-based catalyst, like artificial photosynthesis is what we have been talking about. So artificial photosynthesis comes from this bio-inspired material, and using of cadmium quantum dots electrodeposited on Fe2O3 is coming out as a very good material, and zinc oxide modified with copper ion is also wonderful material. So here the status is that IMMT Bhubaneswar is doing wonderfully good. They're making reactors, photo reactors for using direct sunlight splitting of water. And also Mohali, ISER Mohali is building up a huge reactor which can deliver almost like some 1 liter per hour of hydrogen. And then, so also in ARCA, we are developing some kind of photoreactors for splitting water using direct sunlight. So here is the electrochemistry part of the water splitting. We all know that to split water in ideal condition, it requires theoretically 1.23 volts. This is a endothermic reaction place where 1.23 volts is required to split water. As we increase the temperature, we might be able to decrease the voltage because we are sending some amount of energy into it. We might be able to reduce the voltage, but this can happen only till certain temperature. After say after 600 or something, you have to, it cannot go further beyond. Also, one more thing is, if you come to this 1.48 volt, this is called a thermoneutral voltage, where even after giving lot of temperature, it will not further go into a reduction in that voltage. So the minimum is like 1.48 volts is minimum required for splitting up of water. If we see it in terms of kilojoules, so we require almost 285.83 kilojoules of energy practically. Theoretically, it's only 237.13 kilojoules, but we have to supply it with another 48.7 from the from the environment, or that is the minus 48.7 kilojoules is because of the environment, and minus 3.7 kilojoules is to increase the pressure of the or to convert the water state into gas stage. We have to use another 3.7 kilojoules. So adding up, it comes to 285.83 kilojoules practical energy that is required for splitting up of water. And this is done by providing with some amount of electricity from outside. And so here there are a lot of over potentials. Over potentials are the potentials that is required to shift from the ideal potential. There is small amount of potential that is a kind of a resistance that is created inside, and that is called over potential. There is a cathodic over potential and anodic over potential, and there is also ohmic resistance, and there is also concentration gradient. All this put together is the loss that we see in the splitting up of water. So based on this, people have come up with different types of electrolyzers. These are called electrolyzers. People have come up with lots of electrolyzers, and everything is dependent upon the electrolyte they use. Alkaline, acid, polymer, and solid oxide. These are the different electrolytes that have been used, and based on the electrolyte itself, the electrolyzers have been named. For example, alkaline electrolyzer is called as alkaline electrolyzer, and a polymer electrolyzer is called as polymer electrolyzer, and solid oxide is SOE. Okay. And if you see, in all the cases, the final reaction is hydrogen production, and in all the cases, if you see, there is a protonic movement or a hydroxyl movement. Okay. The overall reaction is very simple. However, the operating temperature varies. In case of the alkaline one, it is 40 to 90 degrees Celsius. In case of the acid, it is 150 degrees Celsius. And the polymer electrolyte, it is between 25 to 150, but nobody goes to 150. And then we have the solid oxide, which is 700 to 1000 degrees Celsius. Okay. I'll come back to it later. And this is what it is actually. The temperature of the electrolyzer plays a major role, and also the kind of electrolyte plays a major role. And coming again here, the efficiency set by DOE, Department of Energy, is 75% efficiency, because you can surely not reach 100% efficiency, and maximum theoretical that we can attain is only 85% at 1.743 volts. So this is what we can attain. So at least 85% is what we require, but DOE has agreed, Department of Energy has agreed for a 75% efficiency for taking up the electrolyzer to the market. So we need to have materials that can sustain this kind of a stringent DOE targets. We have to lower the cost, reduce cost volatility. That is, sometimes there is use of platinum. The cost of platinum fluctuates. So reduce the cost of volatility and better purity and improve safety, because oxygen and hydrogen are two combustible gases. So mixing of hydrogen and oxygen lead to a big scenario. So we have to avoid those kind of mishaps. So improve safety, lower the labor cost, because it requires a lot of skilled labor. You have to lower the labor cost and improve reliability of the supply. Okay. So coming to the alkaline water electrolyzers, here there is a diaphragm that separates the two sides, the cathodic part and the anodic part. In the cathodic part, we have the hydrogen being evolved, and the oxygen is evolved from the anodic part. And we know that any beaker type cells also have this kind of a cell. Two cells are there, and we have an anode and a cathode. But here we are separating these two by a separator. Okay, and this separator can be anything like asbestos. Starting from asbestos, it can be any porous material, and this is called a diaphragm. Here, the electrolyte used is the alkaline electrolyte. It can be KOH of 3 molar or 6 molar, and this OH minus transports between these two sides. So with application of voltage, oxygen is evolved from the anode side, and from the cathode side, hydrogen is evolved. This is a very simple reaction, but constructing it into a stack, that is, the cell has to be repeated continuously. The number of cells will make the amount of hydrogen high. It cannot be run in a single cell, so it has to be repeated many times. Construction of the cells is very important, and this is where chemical engineering is required, as everybody pointed out earlier. Okay. So the common electrolyte is aqueous potassium hydroxide, and 30% concentration. Operation condition is 70 to 100. The operational voltage can rise from 1.7 to 2.2 volts, and of course, diaphragm is asbestos. Efficiency is 70 to 80%. This is a very cheap electrode preparation method, and also the construction can be done very easily. Low specific production rate. The efficiency is very low at this point of time, depending upon how you construct it. So, though we say that it's a cheap construction materials can be used, the efficiency will come down, and that will reduce our possibility of selling it. And with sophistication, there has been a lot of improvement in this alkaline electrolyzer. So this is called, the previous one which you saw is not a zero gap electrolyzer, but there is something called a zero gap electrolyzer. So in zero gap electrolyzer, it is almost like a sandwich, like your lithium ion battery. You have, I think you must have seen a lithium ion battery, like there is no gap between the two electrodes. There is a separator which runs between the two electrodes, but it is all set into one compressed laminate. Okay. This electrolyzer also looks similar to that, but when I say zero gap, it doesn't mean that there's actually zero gap. There is small amount of micro gap, and in this micro gap, we flow the electrolyte. There is something called a flow field, and in the flow field, the electrolyte runs, and there is a membrane in between the two electrodes. This membrane can conduct OH ion, and this is called anion exchange membrane. This can conduct only OH minus ions and cannot conduct any other contaminants. So this gives a lot of advantage for us to produce more hydrogen, when there is space between the electrodes. Because it is near zero, we have lot of electrodes can be stacked up together to produce a huge amount of hydrogen. This is called zero gap configuration, and it is widely accepted as a good and robust electrolyzer design. So here we use nickel oxide and nickel NiOH twice and NiOH as electrodes. Also NiFe is cathode. So here the material of construction does not require platinum at all. So it is very cost effective. And coming to the status in India, again BARC is one of the leaders. Then we have CSIR SICRI, which is also having a lot of technology in this. And then we have ERADA. And NICE is one based out of Gurgaon. It has a very good solar powered electrolyzer, and they have set up a refueling plant of hydrogen with somewhere around 120 kilowatt of solar panel. They produce hydrogen, and it's totally green. It's one of the pride of Gurgaon now. So coming to the next one, it's a solid oxide water electrolysis. Here, in the case of the previous one, either there is no separator, or there is one membrane, one asbestos sheet which is there between the two electrodes, or in case of the zero gap, there is a small membrane. In this case, the separator is ceramic. The ceramic is able to conduct some oxide ions, and this is able to transfer the oxygen to the other side, where it forms the hydrogen. So it is something like there's a thick panel of ceramic. On either side there is two electrodes, like the positive and the negative electrode, and with application of steam, this produces the hydrogen. The cathode is usually metal ceramic composite, and it is mainly the yttria stabilized zirconium. And then we have the electrolyte, also something similar to the yttria stabilized zirconia. And in case of the anode, it is mostly to do with lanthanum, LSMs. So this is a widely studied field also, where the materials can be, the inorganic materials, inorganic ceramics can be constructed in different ways. But one main thing about these ceramics as electrolyte is that their conduction is very poor in low temperature. They cannot do low temperature conduction. They have to be done at high temperature. So most of the SOECs or solid oxide electrolyzers operate at 500 to 800 degrees Celsius, and this is only possible where there is huge amount of heat, waste heat is produced in an industry. So this is mostly to do with high temperature industries. And coming to the PEM is supposed to be one of the most lucrative of all the electrolyzers right now. And what it uses is a polymer electrolyte membrane, and this polymer electrolyte membrane it actually sandwiches between two electrodes, again something similar to alkaline electrolyzer, but here the proton conduction takes place instead of the hydroxyl conduction. So here the conduction is via proton, and the stack is very simple. It operates at room temperature, and the conductivity is very high. Also, it can do high pressure. It can be operated at high pressure, though not cheap. Okay, and you don't have a possibility of no need for backup power supply to shut down. As soon as there is a cutoff of electricity, the hydrogen production stops. This is very simple, and it can operate at high current density. What it means here is that when we increase the amount of when we apply a voltage, high voltage, sometimes what happens is there is degradation of the membrane or the asbestos sheet or whatever is there in between. There is a possibility of degradation, but in this case that is not there. As we keep increasing the voltage, the current also increases, and equal amount of hydrogen is released by Faraday's law. Okay, so high current density operation is possible in case of PEM, whereas in case of alkaline it is not at all possible, because there is a huge ohmic drop because of the asbestos, and also might be there is a huge gap for the liquid electrolyte to run across. So these are some of the advantages of PEM, and how it is constructed is there is a polymer electrolyte membrane here. This is the center of our attraction, and this is sandwiched. The membrane is sandwiched between two electrodes. It's a porous electrode which can have the liquid to run through it, the water to run through it, and then we have some gaskets, and then we have the flow field. This is called the flow field, where the water actually runs through. It runs in a pressurized manner so that the catalyst is able to absorb and split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. So on the other side, the cathode side also, the same configuration is used, and this is how the whole PEM looks. The same concept is used for a PEM based fuel cell also. In both cases, the construction is same, but only thing is, in case of a fuel cell, you give hydrogen, and in case of a electrolyzer, you give water. This is the only difference, and you are able to, interchangeably use the same device for electrolyzer as well as fuel cell. But there is a constraint there. I'll tell you what it is in the later stages. Okay, so we have a lot of materials, and I'll not go through all this, but in the case of the cathode side, we need to have a unsupported platinum. In alkaline electrolyzer, we don't need to have any platinum, but in case of a PEM electrolyzer, we need to have platinum, because hydrogen adsorption on platinum is much faster, much better, and easier compared to any other. And on the oxygen side, we cannot use platinum again, because platinum forms a irreversible oxide in case of the oxygen side. So we cannot use the platinum in the oxygen side, and we have to use some oxide, other oxides like iridium oxide or ruthenium oxide, and mixture of it. So that will be very good for use as the oxygen side catalyst. Okay, how we derive about all this, use of or the efficiency of a catalyst is done through the volcano plot. Here a simple, electrochemistry is carried out, and we find the exchange current density, and on the y-axis we plot the exchange current density. On the x-axis we plot the MH bond strength, and it comes out as a volcanic plug, as you see here. And in this, platinum takes the prime portion or the peak portion, and ruthenium, rhodium, iridium, and rhenium all forms in the nearby, while even AU is only the lower part of the volcano. So this is something very important as a student you should know for if you're going to work in electrocatalysts. Okay. And so people are looking to go away from this noble metal catalysts, and that is also a prime area where we have to look, like using organometallics or MXins or usage of MOFs. These kind of new materials are trying to come not equal to platinum but closer to platinum, which is sufficient for reducing the cost of the catalyst in Indian scenario. So there are various parameters here, like what we rate for studying this catalyst. This is all there already, known very well. And so nickel, cobalt, iron are some of the new materials that can come out of studies for over MXins and MOFs. Same way in the anode side, we need to have ruthenium oxide, iridium oxide, or lanthanum nitrate, or these are some of the OER catalysts, oxygen evolution reaction catalysts. Again, ruthenium plays, if you see, ruthenium is the first one. Ruthenium and iridium oxide are the best catalysts in the market, and very costly again. So we have to go for replacement of this catalyst also. And there are some parameters when the band structure depends on the electron transfer, or the bond strength and the number of d electrons tells how many steps are there to the adsorbed species, what we see here. Okay, there's mostly a three-step process. So one more important thing here is the catalytic supports. The catalyst is supported over something, right? It can be carbon, or it can be TIC or anything of that sort. But in case of an electrolyzer, on one side the applied water potential is too huge that if you use carbon, it is going to get oxidized. So you cannot use porous carbon materials as the catalytic support. You need to shift it to something like TIC, like this, the iridium over TIC is one of the best example for a robust electrocatalyst on the oxygen side. Or else you can also use, some people have reported using TiO2 in its conducting form. Though TiO2 is called a semiconductor, TiO2 at one particular structure, it becomes highly conducting, as good as graphene. So people have tried to use that as a support as well. And coming to the main part, that is the electrolyte part of the PEM, the polymer electrolyte membrane. This is one of the one of the most difficult part that I should say in India is we don't have a membrane at all. We don't have a proton exchange membrane to date. We don't, though the various groups are producing some random chemistry, random polymers, that doesn't come out as a single stretch membrane, and it does not have a good ionic conductivity. So this is one place where the chemistry here can be tuned, and we can make a very good polymer electrolyte membrane or proton exchange membrane. The main problem here is it uses lot of fluorine. As you know, we have to go away from fluorine. Here we use lot of fluorine, and the main PEM that we use currently is a PTFE, backbone perfluorosulfonic acid based polymer. So if we can move away from this to make a good conductor, proton conductor with less of fluorine, then it will be very good research, and I think very few groups are trying to work on this. So there are other alternate membranes, but everything uses almost similar chemistry, and research on this is still very hot. Okay, the same thing I'm telling here. There is a lot of scope for the polymer people to work and have very good proton exchange membrane. And also in case of the ceramic based membranes, what we see in SOFC, there is a lot of scope. And finally, coming to the bipolar plates, the bipolar plate is a huge market by itself, because in case of electrolyzers, we have to have all the material conducting. You have to apply a voltage, and this voltage has to be carried through until we make hydrogen and oxygen. So if we have to send the water in two plates, this plate should also be conducting. there are material like titanium or stainless steel, but making the grooves, making the flow field channel to certain precise pressure and conductivity is very difficult. So India is lacking this one, and as rightly pointed out, we need some amount of chemical engineers to do modeling or understand what a flow will, how a flow will affect the chemistry of the electrocatalyst. So these are some properties which has been listed out, and India suffers in manufacturing these bipolar plates as well. This is a setup of a electrolyzer. The PEM fuel cell, the PEM cell stack is here, and you see lots of other peripherals, or there's a lot of balance of plant required for running this to get the hydrogen in a particular pressure. And that is where the trick is, and this is what is we have to do from here. Like, we have to understand the way the PEM is operated, how much at what temperature it operates, and how much of cooler chilled water has to be sent, and all those things has to be studied, and the parameter has to be set properly to make the stack work for a huge amount of hydrogen. And this is the balance of plant occupies almost 32% of the cost of the full system, and power supply is 15%, while the stack itself is 53% of the cost of the full system. So if you buy a electrolyzer, if you want to make an electrolyzer, 53% goes to the stack, and this 53% goes from material for the stack. So material part is to be it has to be scaled up, while the cost has to be reduced. And the stack cost itself is split up like this. So the balance, if you see the flow field plates, the metallic plates itself has a 48% share. And the MEA, as I told you, the membrane electrode assembly, or the membrane part of it, occupies 24% of the cost. So these are some of the disadvantages where, so though the PEM fuel cells can operate at very high pressures, still there is some problem with back diffusion of hydrogen into the oxygen compartment, and these all things has to be sorted out. The stack cost is very high. There is a trade-off with higher pressure, the same thing what I told you. And coming to the advantages, it is very simple design which everybody can adapt and can make a single cell or two cells at very easier way. And mechanical compressors can be attached to use the hydrogen and compress it and take it away to different place. So these are some of the electrolyzers that has been built over the time in India, and ARCI is here. We have built our own electrolyzer with 5 nm cube of hydrogen per hour. So there are others like which have been technology transferred, and people are likely the manufacturers are likely willing to take it up further. And if you see the global scenario, alkaline electrolyzer is still predominant. There are a lot of players, there are a lot of people, industries that are working in this line. But in India as such, there are 2 or 3 like Eastern Electrolyzer and a couple of them. India is still yet to grow. And in case of PEM electrolyzer, there are only a few, where in case of PEM electrolyzer, we have some Indian presence like the ITM Power, and one more is there, hydrogenic, not hydrogenic, so one more is there, which is not listed here, but their Indian presence is more than the alkaline electrolyzer presence. So this is a very tricky situation at present. The capex, or the capital cost, is very high right now, and if we reduce the capital cost, we reduce the durability, and if you reduce the capital cost, the efficiency also comes down. And the same is the case with the OPEX. If you reduce the OPEX, we reduce the durability, and also the efficiency comes down. So we need something which is very cost effective, we need something which is scalable, we need the electrolyzer to run 24/7, but still the cost should be low, is very difficult to make, and that is where we are working on. And if you think, many questions come that water electrolyzers spend too much of water. So is this true? No, I don't think this is true, because with the membrane technology what we have seen, water, desalination of water is one of the most cost-effective way to produce good water for electrolysis. So water is not going to be the rate determining step in this case. Might be the power systems and the balance of plant or some things which might affect the overall electrolysis, but water is not the main rate determining step. And this is in nutshell the three different electrolysis. One is alkaline, then is the PM, and then the solid oxide electrolysis. Everything has got its disadvantages, and why I summarize with the disadvantages is because this is an area where we can improve in terms of material research. In case of alkaline electrolysis, the corrosive liquid electrolyte, low pressure of the generated gases, this requires purification of hydrogen at different stages. In case of PM electrolysis, the high cost of the catalyst, and in case of the solid oxide electrolysis, electrolyzer, there's a limited lifetime due to thermal cycles. Okay, so this is in a nutshell the three types of green hydrogen that can be produced using electrolysis. And coming to the third arm, that is the storage part. Hydrogen has to be stored at the end. We cannot just leave it at ambient. We have to store it. We have to first compress it and store it into tanks, because hydrogen being very light, it tends to move away. We have to compress it into tanks, and here we generally have the cylinders that you have in your labs is around 120 to 150 bar, but we need to have something like 750 bar, and in India we don't have compressors of that size, to compress to 750, and it has to go in three stages, like we go from 150 to 350 to 750. So at least if we can reach 350 bar of compression, the hydrogen gas, it might be useful for transportation. That itself is half what Japan and America is using, but still we can at least go 50% higher. So these are some kind of composite tanks. These composite tanks are not as heavy as our steel tanks that we use in lab. It can be handled in single hand. It is made up of composites, and here I would like to make a mention that India is trying to work on this, like IIT Mandi and IIT Roper are working on this kind of cylinders. And apart from that, there is hydrogen storage materials where the hydrogen is stored into some kind of aluminum hydride or say ammonium borohydride, and or it can be trapped in pentane or something of that sort, and then released where it is required in the later stage. So in that manner we have here we have ammonia, methanol, aluminum hydride, magnesium hydride, all these things, out of which ammonia seems to be quite attractive, where it can take the maximum hydrogen and later it can be converted to hydrogen. So this is one of the place where catalysis and reactions based on ammonia can be thought upon for green chemistry. So ammonia lysis instead of water electrolysis. Ammonia lysis is one of the strongest contender for transporting hydrogen. So the challenges in harnessing hydrogen potential in India is, one is high production cost, lack of manufacturers of electrolyzers, refueling stations and fuel cells, slow development of hydrogen infrastructure, need for efficient and pure hydrogen for fuel cells application, lack of robust supply chain network, lack of hydrogen storage facility, development of water desalination unit with indigenous RO membrane. This is the most important part. And then effective integration of PV power with electrolyzer using effective power conversion and balance of system. And opportunities is wide application of hydrogen, making versatile for cross-sector use, opening gateway for advanced energy storage technologies, solution enabling easy transition of major industrial infrastructure to adopt green hydrogen economy, and offering cost-effective electrolysis, and same thing, offering solution for CO. This is one thing which India needs to look into, because RO systems are coming up rapidly, as Professor Mitra was telling in the morning, but the membrane part is still a question which the technologies we are buying from outside. So if we can think about something in this line, we will be able to take it up further, and conduciveness for business is one thing which we are all working on. So I will end up with this quote. This is what has been already told. Net zero is nothing but this. So if you have to start and end at the same place, it is this. We have to look up at the sun. Sun is the major source of hydrogen. Also, it burns and gives energy, and then we have to convert this back to hydrogen, then it becomes net zero. Saira.
Brother. Brother, it was a nice talk. I have one question which has been always bothering me about desalination of water. We use RO and we are able to separate out salt and we have pure water that we can drink. But there is a side effect that I think we are creating where the lot of salts, because most of the times the application of RO is more towards groundwater based or seawater based sources, where we are bringing that salt to the surface water, which contaminates the surface water thing. So is there a thing that we are actually coming back to when we do RO based purification of water, that we are contaminating the surface of the earth? So will it again stand in the sustainability thing? Yes, it's a thought that has been bothering because experts are here. Maybe you can.
It's a nice thought. But currently, I think that contamination is nothing compared to what we are already contaminated. So, for example, though there is a lot of talk about green hydrogen, there are papers which runs saying that green hydrogen or hydrogen by itself is a greenhouse gas over a period of time. So, at present, we are left with no choices but to do something. The sustainable part is where we are, no, it is a very grey area. You will agree with me? Sustainable part is a very grey area where today's sustenance might not be tomorrow's sustenance.
Strategy that fuel utilization, fossil fuel energy, tap into the hydrogen source, irrespective of day or whatever. The eventual energy efficiency, how you can minimize, you can stretch the use of fossil fuel. There is a thought process along that direction. Not like 100% one can switch over from this transition
Surely.
to the other. So, but definitely yes. Statistical of an urban cluster, amount of fluoride that might come from toothpaste of concern. So I think the whole problem here is, Gandhiji says, enough need but not for greed, right? So there has to be some kind of a thing. I have one question out of experience on a H cube which generates hydrogen, which can go up to 100 bar. The quality of water seems to be a kind of a limitation at times. Even if we buy water for a very good quality, there is some fluctuation is seen. That is the first question. Second question is, in the electrolysis option of this hydrogen, what is the material of construction for the electrodes?
In case of alkaline?
No, classical, just plain water.
In case of plain water, see, we can use a PEM based system. In case of a PEM based system, it's going to be platinum on one side and iridium and oxide, iridium and ruthenium oxide on the other side. On the oxygen evolution side, it's going to be ruthenium oxide. On the hydrogen evolution side, it's going to be platinum.
But iridium is also an endangered.
Exactly, yeah. This is all where the research has to go on. And iridium, again there is a contamination of, in case the water is going to be contaminated, iridium gets poisoned. So we know what we want. This.
No, it is a good solution, but the quality of water, especially when it's not electrolysis based.
Which one?
The fuel cells in the cars.
The fuel cell,
it is not electrolysis.
No, yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you, that the hydrogen source we are not bothered about when you use a fuel cell. The hydrogen is the pure hydrogen. It can be from anywhere. It can be from chloroalkali plants or any membrane separated hydrogen.
White hydrogen?
White hydrogen is only in Australia or South Africa. So white hydrogen might be a very good solution, but yeah, you have to look up at sun.
Just wanted to add one important point, brother, which you have raised, that hydrogen itself is not a greenhouse gas, but it influences the atmospheric chemistry and increases the concentration of methane. That's how it acts. Indirectly, it increases the radiative force. Just wanted to inform that hydrogen itself is not a greenhouse.
It will, see, once the hydrogen concentration, as we keep exhausting hydrogen, hydrogen is going to go up directly, and it will start to, again start to get collected, and that will start any other byproduct reactions.
Very nice presentation. Also, the recent L1 Aditya mission image you have put, sir. Coming to, you mentioned about the 2 kg carbon dioxide limit, right? So, where is this limit coming from? And don't you think these are like process dependent, and these are like
No, so
on the size of the process, or
yeah. So at present there is nothing like totally carbon free. Like even for manufacturing the solar panels, some amount of carbon dioxide is used. Sorry, some amount of carbon is used, right? So during the process of making solar panels, carbon dioxide is released. Even that is taken into account.
but what do you mean by 2 kg for like how many panels? For example, if I take the example of solar panel, you want to prepare 100, you want to prepare 1000, you want to prepare 10,000.
So for 1 kg of hydrogen,
1 kg of
1 kg of hydrogen. So there is something called 111 rule. It's called 1 kg of hydrogen in $1 in 1 decade. This is what you call the roadmap for preparing green hydrogen or clean hydrogen. In this itself, they have agreed that 2 kgs of carbon dioxide can be released. Because as he told, there is nothing called no carbon dioxide. There is only low carbon dioxide. Only we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that can be exhausted.
The sequestration is another alternative.
CO2 sequestration is one very important thing that has to come. So there is a huge potential for material research, and at the same time we have to look, like for example our Parthi can look into, because of the space, there is a lot of space here, we can look into setting up, think of TRL levels from 3 to 5 in that area right now. Instead of going only to 1 and 2, you can think about some material which is already, you must be having some very good material that you can take up and try to scale up, where one thing is not about, attracting funds, it's also about giving back something to the society. So, like what the water, you did a water, Parthi did a water purifier system. Similar to that, we can do storage systems.
And you mentioned about this Titan TIO conducting, right? So,
TIO, yeah.
So that is because of non-stoichiometric oxygen.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But then, like if you have defects, don't you think that you can also have IR drop and ohmic losses?
Surely. In case of that Magdalene place, it has very low drop, yeah.
But defects generally can give you.
No, it is they say it is a metastable state, but still they have tried to take it out, and there's a lot of work going on in that direction.
And this PM you mentioned about that ohmic losses are very less. So what is the reason for it?
In PEM.
Because
One thing.
polymer is also a insulator, right? Or
Which one?
Atmospheric semiconductor. Or it can become conductor.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, it uses polymer, right?
Polymer it is.
So there will be, like you say, you can have polymer depending on this depending on whatever polymer you use. Conducting, semiconducting, or insulating, right?
So in this case, it is a pure protonic conductor.
Okay.
It is pure protonic conductor and zero electronic conductor. So by making it a zero electronic conductor, there is no short.
Yeah, true.
By reducing the short and by increasing the amount of proton conduction, we are reducing the ohmic drop.
Okay. Yeah, this ammonia you mentioned that it's very good for. Is it for transportation or hydrogen storage?
Which one?
Ammonia.
Ammonia is for transportation.
So how does that work actually?
So what this is all, as told earlier, it's all some models that are being worked upon. Instead of taking it as hydrogen, because hydrogen is, as I told, volumetrically it is very small, whereas ammonia volumetrically is very high. So the energy density in the converting into hydrogen is very high. So you can carry, for the same cylinder size, you can carry more of ammonia and more of hydrogen instead of carrying it in terms of gaseous hydrogen.
So when you put ammonia in a, suppose you have a ammonia cylinder, put hydrogen in it. So probably it can carry more hydrogen, is it? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is this some
And we can then do ammonia lysis later, wherever we want to use it.
There's no clear mechanism, is not understood.
Mechanically?
The mechanism.
Mechanism is 6-electron transfer, that is understood actually, ammonia lysis.
No, for this storage part, transportation part. How is the ammonia interacting with hydrogen?
With the hydrogen?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it does anything because it's already in a stable state.
Exactly. So how does it help?
No, we are going to take the ammonia itself. We are going to transport the ammonia itself. We are going to take ammonia itself and make hydrogen there in wherever we want to use.
So you want storage, you say transportation?
Yeah. So, for example, if you are going to take 1 kg of hydrogen.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Ram sir.
Yeah.
Very insightful talk, sir. Thank you. I was just wondering that now that electric vehicles have started to get popular, in the future, would governments be more interested in funding projects which aim at producing green electricity as such? Or do you think in hydrogen as a fuel cell applications, production of green hydrogen, how does the future look now that we are already moving towards electric vehicles?
So, this is a very good question, brother. Because one thing is, fuel cell is not in the scope right now. Fuel cell is, one use of hydrogen is for fuel cell, right? Whereas all other, if you see the fertilizer industry, the other industries have lot of more, stake. So, using it directly, using the green hydrogen directly into fertilizer industry or the steel industry is much more meaningful than to convert it into electricity through fuel cell. Yeah. It's 6.5%, yeah. 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 And one more, the round trip efficiency of using a fuel cell, I'll just give you one small number. If you are using 1 kilowatt of energy to produce, say, some amount of hydrogen, when you use the same amount of hydrogen into fuel cell, you are going to get only 700 watts. Okay, so 300 watts is lost. So fuel cell is might be when there is surplus of green hydrogen, fuel cell might become a use. And also thinking about the other part is when you talk about of course. Yeah, that is all there. So, but at present, India is looking for use of hydrogen directly into some chemical processes only. Because fuel cell cost is more. So, fuel cell is almost like equal to the electrolyzer's cost. And second thing is, fuel cell is thought about in terms of range extensions. So if you want to have an overnight haul or a truck carrying lot of material and you want to make it as electric vehicle, then you can use hydrogen based fuel cells to range extend these batteries. You don't have to stop anywhere. You carry a small cylinder of hydrogen, then fuel cell, then you have the battery system. The battery, when it's getting exhausted, this fuel cell part will pump in electricity into the battery, and that will elongate the run. It will not make you stop anywhere to charge, because charging takes of course now turbochargers have come, but normal charging takes more than 3 hours, or the overnight charging are required. Instead of that, these fuel cell chargings can be very good range extenders. Yeah. So these are iota, this small iota of research is required to understand what is the techno-commercial aspects, and fuel cell will take some time more. 2030, as a person standing with fuel cell, I don't think 2030 is what India is looking for use of green hydrogen. Might be green hydrogen itself will take till 2030, and later we can think about fuel cells. Till then we need research. The research cannot stop for fuel cells.
Siren sir. Few years back, I heard that Ambani group of companies, they made up of a hydrogen cars.
Bus.
Hydrogen cars. They made
Cars? No, bus.
Buses. Any reason to fail?
Any reason to?
Fail that.
See, the techno-commercial aspect is what drives the business. What we all think from terms of efficiency and the material reproducibility, all these things are one part. But the major part when it comes to product launch and things, might be you must be able to answer this, brother, very well. Yeah.
Any new where it can perhaps hydrogen. There is a break. Hydrogen projects will go through.
Will go through, yeah.
Now the only risk in hydrogen project is technology which the hydrogen project might
Catch up and which will drop down. Yeah. So you saw three technologies here, like one is the PEM based one, the other one was alkaline based one, and the third one was SOEC based one. So out of these three, which one will take up and which will go faster, move faster, is what the ministry itself is trying to do. Like they are trying to give a lot of Hydrogen Valley is one such project which is coming up in Maharashtra, and I think Andhra is also having one HV value, and Tamil Nadu is trying to get in, Kerala is trying to get in, where Hydrogen Valley, where you make everything in hydrogen. You start like all the three arms of the hydrogen economy is try to be capitalized, and we'll see a techno-commercial comparison, and then we'll take that particular technology as Indian into India. They'll roll out manufacturing units, and more industries will come in. This kind of thing is what is expected.
And also hydrogen storage issue also.
Yes, yeah. But I could have put one more slide here, that out of the three arms, hydrogen storage is in much better scale. It is commercially, it is easy to adapt, because already the 750 bar pressure composite cylinders are already available in foreign market. But here in India, of course, we are growing. So we need to charge the 750 bar cylinder with some amount of pressure, right? That charging units has to be developed here. It is a very tricky process where we are sending in hydrogen. We have to pressurize it, and it has to be the whole system has to be cooled, else there will be some kind of temperature imbalance. Yeah.
Madam sir, like which MOFs are good for CO2 capture and uses like
CO2 capture. There is a lot like Fe based and cobalt based are quite, they are working on it. And now there are, bimetallic MOFs which have shown wonderful carbon dioxide capture and sequestration. So bimetallic is one thing which is come. Recent paper shows bimetallic has very good MOF. That is one. MOF and COFs are, I think, one area that we can work on. Covalent.
Raman, one more question. So, what is the future? Is all these fuel cells, and are they going to be better than say photolytic water splitting? Or semiconductor?
So everything is going to, wherever there is, so everything is going to add up. So it's not going to be one particular technology until we make it as we pinpoint into that. At this point of time, everything looks promising. Yeah.
Because
even photoelectric.
Only one technology will survive, I believe.
Need not be, brother. Like what?
Unless they are comparable.
Like VRFB flow batteries that is coming up right now. That is also, see, after lithium-ion battery, something like lithium-ion battery, which had so much of manufacturability and scaling up was done in 1990s itself. Still, we are not able to catch up with that in Indian market. Similar to that,
Any technology will, there is slight advantage also, people will prefer that unless the costs are, replacing it is very expensive, otherwise they just, it will beat others, right?
so here two things like as we are discussing during the lunchtime. So one thing is the manufacturers, like the industry, has to come up with some kind of solution to take up this fundamental research or scaled up research to certain level. From there, the industry has to pick up and make it as manufacturable, or else top driven manufacturable. Already, there should be some manufacturers who is ready to fund into this for a particular given problem which they have already identified.
No, one more question. With this new NRF which is coming up, so they are saying that industries to contribute to this one. Are industries going to contribute at, say, TRL 1, level 1, level 2 and things like that?
I don't think so.
No.
No.
Then who is
No,
going
no,
to fund that? The government is not funding.
Industries may fund you if you have a 3-4
Yeah,
years
exactly.
project,
Yeah.
and their investment can encash on your know-how or IP, so that they can take it to 7 and 8. That is
But then who's going to, is the government going to fund TRL level 1 and 2?
1 and 2 nowadays. It's a very tricky question because until and unless you're fundamentally different from a concept perspective and you're looking at a completely new class of materials, it becomes difficult to justify a 1 and 2.
But then you don't never know like what is going to come, what is not going to come.
Yes.
That,
Unfortunately, that is an area we should not compromise because there may be more 1 and 2s
Actually
which
go
we
up.
can tend to miss out.
Yeah.
You're right.
that's why now recently what has happened is there are a lot of bilateral projects that are coming up, like Indo-Russia, Indo-French, Indo-German, where both TRL levels are looked upon. One is at higher level and one at lower level. So considering that, if you see for Indo-French, there is a specific mention that you look at into TRL, lower TR levels.
One point for everybody, need to remember, when you say technology, a lot of extra engineering that happens to retrofit it. Suppose we have a building, an IT tower, a lot of other engineering components fitted into energy source. Second concept, Chennai has proven it once more, is the technology that you are going to introduce 6 years from today, it should also stand the test of climatic resilience.
Yeah.
Because we design a technology, we lay the lines thinking that Chennai will be a safe place. It is flooded.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, Hyderabad or maybe a desert can get snow and vice versa.
Yeah.
So nowadays in sustainability, people are also saying that the eventual hardware should have some level of unpredictable climatic, some level of safety built into it. So
And the
that
last question.
adds to the cost, but that's also a necessity now.
I'll just ask question. Other things you can discuss offline. So, like, what is the scope of fundamental research in the new science policy of the government of India? Where does fundamental research stand?
DST, my guess is
Yeah.
DST, DBT will continue to support.
Yeah. There is some.
But then in future, maybe DST you have to go for DST. DAE probably also
See,
gives.
fundamentally, in the sense, if you look into the Center for Theoretical Physics or anything that the TIFR, those really seriously fundamental research is still supported under the Department of Atomic Energy.
There's a DAE. There is
Right? And TIFR doesn't look for funds from DBT, DST. You get the large chunk of funds. Now, coming back to the other fundamental, I think under the bigger landscape of bilateral or strategic collaborations, a part of the grant can be diverted.
Into, and that's why, as I mentioned, you have a upscaled project running in the same institute that will generate some kind of revenue from projects, and you carry out your own fundamental research using that project money. You just have small amount diverted, because fundamental research might not require a lot of money. You have, say, 1 crore or 1.2 crores of money for your scaled up project, and you put it as 1.5, and the remaining 0.3 you use it for fundamental research. That's how it is running in other.
Maybe I'll ask one more question. Right? So, what about ethanol as a fuel? Like ethanol.
Yeah, ethanol as a fuel is being considered. Yeah,
Considered?
yeah,
So
yeah. It's
where
being
is it
considered.
to like lie in the entire picture of the government perspective.
No, they are considering it. They are seriously considering it as well. Yeah. Methanol and ethanol are seriously being considered.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from other campuses?
So in case the online attendees have any questions, I requested you to please put it in the chat box so that we can forward it to the respective speaker. So with this, we are at the concluding part of the symposium. I thank Dr. Raman for his wonderful talk, kind of encyclopedic talk on green hydrogen and the related technicalities and also applications. Now I request Dr. Lakshminath to give concluding remarks for the symposium.
Once again, offering humble pranams at Bhagavan's lotus feet. Sai Ram to all of you. I'm sure today we have learned a lot about sustainability and the 3 R's or the 6 R's, as we can say, and the 3 E's, and several definitions and topics of sustainability. Today's symposium started with Vedam chanting, and after that followed by introductory remarks by the head of the department. After that, Professor Raghavendra Prasad, our Vice Chancellor Sir, has set the tone for today's symposium. The first speaker of the morning, Professor Somnath Mitra, talked about sustainability through advanced chemical separations. He stressed the point that thermal distillation is a major energy consumer and in various separation processes like petroleum refining, chemical manufacturing, solvent purification, etc. So a solution to this problem was developed by his team where we learned about membrane technologies such as membrane distillation and evaporation were used. These techniques operated at much lower temperatures, thereby contributing to overall energy efficiency. A membrane-based downstream processing technology was prepared aimed at lowering the capex and opex, and this was developed by them. For doing this, they used functional carbon nanotubes. And these were used in methods for biofuel processing and solvent recycling. The second speaker of the morning, Dr. Dhurjati Shiva Mudigonda, spoke about sustainable flexible packaging and overview. In his talk, he highlighted how packaging industry plays a pivotal role in minimizing its environmental footprint and provided an overview of sustainability in the context of flexible packaging, and he focused specifically on paper-based substrates. We learned about the various categories of flexible packaging and about the barrier requirements, use of eco-friendly materials like biopolymers, recycling, etc. He concluded by speaking about the challenges faced in designing sustainable materials. The last speaker of the morning session of the symposium was Shri Giri Guruswami sir. He talked about the key challenges for sustainability in the global chemical industry like energy intensity and usage, carbon dioxide emissions, sustainable materials, water pollution, etc. He spoke about the various aspects of sustainability in chemical industry and also showed us how Indian chemical industry is going to become a 1,000 billion market by 2040, and also stressed the importance of sustainability in this for this. He also said that the importance of, he stressed how the German chemical industry was practicing or sustainable protocols, and it was the good practices of theirs were important. He stressed finally the importance of adopting sustainable methods to make chemistry green and clean by using renewable feedstocks, green catalysis, solvents and atom economy. In the afternoon session, we had the first speaker, Professor Gopi Chandran, who explained how the landscape of chemical management has co-evolved with our understanding of resilience of Earth's systems. The political economy, social contract of businesses to tackle externalities, The spatial and temporal aspects of impact and mitigation are some of the factors that dominate the contours of management options. He said that the 5 important cases to force climate change were discussed and presented the insights about the nexus across the 8 facets of chemical management. He spoke about the 9 planetary boundaries and the importance of management of climate change. The next speaker was Dr. Srinivas, who took us through a world of flow chemistry. He started with the life cycle of APIs and gave a bird's eye view of pharmaceutical chemistry. He showed us several structures and stressed upon the fact that the complexity in the structures is increasing day by day. And then he stated the importance of innovative and sustainable methods in chemical process development to address the current challenging requirements of the pharmaceutical industry. He said that the advancement in instrumentation and engineering solutions have made it possible for flow chemistry technology to permeate into various aspects of chemical research and development at laboratory level. He also shared some success stories where flow chemistry had been used for synthesis of MSM, bromination, and some of other products, which is a green process. Finally, the last speaker of the day, Dr. Raman Vedarajan, spoke about a gateway to sustainable solution through green hydrogen, which ended just now. He discussed the importance of green hydrogen as a pivotal gateway to sustainable solutions across diverse sectors. And he said that hydrogen holds promise in revolutionizing energy production, transportation, and industrial processes without carbon emissions. The generation, transportation, and storage are the 3 pivotal arms of hydrogen economy, and he discussed the details of these. Finally, he ended with the challenges and opportunities in harnessing the hydrogen potential in India. Now I invite Dr. Smaran to deliver the vote of thanks. Sairam.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Before we proceed with the vote of thanks, as a memento or a token of gratitude to all the speakers for this session, we would be offering a token of gratitude from the Department of Chemistry, Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. So I will be requesting each of the speakers, I will be calling out their names to come in front of Swami's Simhasan, and one of our senior faculty will be offering you a token of appreciation. So I request Professor Challi Janardhan sir to please come, and I also request Professor Gopichandran sir. Yeah. Now I request Professor Sundareshan sir to please come onto the stage. And also I request Dr. Srinivas. Now I request Professor Rajni Bhandari ma'am to hand over the token of Yes sir. So I request Professor Nageshwara sir to please come over to the stage and offer the token of gratitude to Dr. Raman. So I have the honorable task to offer the vote of thanks for this symposium. This symposium opened up discussions on various facets of sustainable chemistry, spanning interdisciplinary domains from sciences to commerce to economics to management. I'm sure every participant, faculty and student will have a brainwave to work with, an idea to explore and further implement, and also to bridge up a collaboration whenever it is feasible with one of the speakers or multiple speakers if feasible. So in this effort towards the symposium, the first and foremost gratitude goes to our Divine Master, Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. I will also take an opportunity to thank the administrative circle, starting from Sri Chakravarti, Chancellor of the University, followed by Vice Chancellor, Professor Raghavendra Prasad, followed by Registrar, Dr. Shrikant Khanna, followed by Controller of Examinations, Dr. G.S. Srirangarajan, for the smooth processing of the academic protocols and practices so that we could conduct smoothly this symposium. And then we come to the list of esteemed and eminent speakers, starting with Professor Somnath Mitra, Dr. Dhurjati Shiva Mudugonda, Sri Giri Guruswami, who spoke in the morning session. They spoke online mode because they were not able to make it and they had to stay up in the night to cater to a requirement. And in the post-lunch session, we had Professor Gopi Chandran. We also had Dr. Srinivas. We also had Dr. Raman Vedrajan, who gave us various insights about what all can be done in this aspect of sustainable chemistry. Coming to the departmental aspects, I would like to thank our senior teachers for guiding through the process of this symposium. First and foremost, I would like to thank Professor Sundareshan, who was the driving force behind this symposium, who kind of initiated this whole process and took it till the end. Also, I would like to thank Professor Chali Janardhan sir, Professor Jagdeshwar Rao sir, Professor Nageshwar Rao sir, and all the current members, faculty members of the Department of Chemistry spanning all the 3 campuses, the support staff involved, the audiovisual department, and last but not the least, the research scholars and the student fraternity, without whom I guess this is all of not any use. Because as all the speakers mentioned, it's the research scholars and the students who will be taking forward whatever ideas got generated here in this podium or in this classroom or in this hall, and they will be carrying out some kind of experiments which will be like, might be the trend setters in the future. So with these words, I end this vote of thanks session. Now we will have the Mangalarti, which will be offered to Swami. I request Professor Gopichandran sir to offer Aarti.
Om Jai
Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Pati Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Sashivadana Shrikara Sarva Pranapate Swami Sarva Pranapate Ashrita Kalpalatika Ashrita Kalpalatika Apadbandhava Om Jai Jagadish Hare Mata Pita Guru Devamu Mariyantayunive Swami Mariyantayunive नाथ ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ, नाथ ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ, नागेन्द्र शयन, ओम जय जगदीश हरे। ओंकार रूप ओजस्वी साई महादेवा, सत्य साई महादेवा, मंगल आरती अंदुको, मंगल आरती अंदुको, मंदर गिरिधारी, ओम जय जगदीश हरे। नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा। नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा। नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।